thank all of you for coming today. This is the Yortzait of Moshe Chaim Sato. For me, it's special. It's hard to believe, but I've been giving this year for 33 years on his Yortzait and so on, and it's been quite a while and so on in terms of that. It's been really a wonderful experience. Some of my best ideas really have come on these shurim. I try and say, or I try and collect my best ideas of the year and say, it's like Shabbos, and say I'm going to say this shir on the Ramchal Yortzait, to cover the Ramchal. Why is it that I do that? Because my experience with Rebbeim is somewhat minimal. I had a Rebbe Muvik, Rav Arya Leib and Shmuel Zev, and so on, and he's already nifted, and the shir is also dedicated to him. Before I start, I'd like to dedicate the shir to the full shlema of some kids and so on, who I understand had some accidents and so on. I'd like to dedicate the shir that in the tzchus of the Ramchal, in this Yortzeit shir, they should have a full shlema as well. I think most of you who've heard me know that I have a unique style, and the unique style is something which seems to have come out of me. But the Ramchal, in many ways, has a very powerful style. He's, in my opinion, he's the only one that I really have experienced what's called systematic thinking. Systematic thinking, what it means is that you never look at a detail in and of itself. You always look at a detail with reference to what's called the whole, or context. So that Chochmah is like a binyan, it's like a building and so on, with a certain structure. And every idea in some way has a specific location in that building. That is a very systematic way of learning. In fact, it's the only way really to learn. If you learn something what's called linearly, where you learn one fact at a time, you will have major issues in understanding. If you look at each piece of information by itself, irrespective of its background, you will have great problems and trouble really understanding what it is. Because Chochmah, or any type of wisdom, is really built on a structural view where every idea is really connected to every other idea. And when you learn, you need to know how to do that. You need to know how to take each idea and put it into what's called the structure of the binyan. And that gives tremendous clarity. And when it comes to Hashkafa, which is fundamentally the basic questions of who God is, who the Baruch Shem is, why He made us, what does He want, human history, how does He act with us, what will happen at the end, when does the end occur, what will happen, all the concept of what's called, in fancy word is eschatology, what it means, what's going to happen at the end of the world. Is there an end to the world? What's going to happen? And we know that to be, of course, the Geula, or the redemption itself with the Mashiach, and so on. But the Ramchal is the first one who treated these basic questions systematically, where everything is kind of connected in this thing. And when I first saw him, when I first saw certain things that he said, I realized that he was completely different than anyone else I've experienced. I've never experienced anyone with the depth or the comprehensive overview like what Moshe Chaim Sato. So even though he's not my Rebbe personally, in a certain sense, he's like my Rebbe from afar, in that kind of sense. And because of that, I try and give his share on the day that he died on his Yortzeit to honor him. And this is what it is and so on. I myself have, a lot of my information comes from him, but the truth of the matter is I use my own mind and my own way of systematizing information, and I develop, to a large extent, my own understanding in this way and so on. But whenever I say something, it's always in what's called in English in context. It means whatever I say is connected to many, many things. In today's a special shir. It's a special shir for me because it is not only the shir that commemorates the Yortzeit of the Ramchal. It's not. For me, it is also, in a certain sense, it commemorates something else. I mean, I don't really know clearly how much hashkafa you all know or how much you're involved in that learning. But the central question of all hashkafa, there's one question in hashkafa or Jewish thinking that is the single most important question that you need to ask, really. We can ask many questions and so on. Because if you have the answer to that, you have an incredible understanding of how Hashem, God, and I'm going to say it in English because the share is going to be put in a way where people who don't know really much Hebrew can also listen to, why he made the world that he did. Okay. And then I mean the world that he did, it's not so much why Hashem, why God created us. Rather, why did he create us in this way where we have a physical universe? Physical universe, and we go through a lot of suffering, a lot of difficulties. It is not easy for us and so on. And why did Hashem do it? Why did he divide the world into two different domains or two different periods? Meaning that the world which is first, fundamentally, is called Olam Hazeh, which is a world where existence is wrapped up in time and space. We all have time. We have a past, we have a present, and a future. See, also, with space, it was all separated by something in between. It's called space. And Hashem created us in a way which is very limiting. And he expects certain things from us. The question is, this world is a very difficult world. It's very painful. If you know anything about human history, you will understand the very difficult situation that people are in, especially the Jewish people. The suffering of the Jewish people throughout history has been enormous. There is no way to truly grasp the level of pain or suffering of Klal Yisrael, of the Jewish people itself. So the question is, what is this? What is this physical universe? We know that this physical universe is the first step towards another step, which is called Olam Haba, which is the future world. Now, the future world is very different than our world. In what way? And it's important to know. Our world is what's called dynamic. Dynamic means we can do things here. We can change things. We can go from point A to point B, and we can exist in a different way from point A to point B. You see it. Olam Haba is static. You don't go anywhere. You don't move. You don't improve. There's no growth in Olam Haba whatsoever. Olam Haba has nothing to do with change. You cannot change in the future world. The future world also is said to be eternal. It's nitzchias, or eternal. What does that mean, eternal? Eternity does not mean a certain number of years, like 1,000,000 years, 1,000,000,000 years, quadrillion, quintillion, sextillion, septillion, octillion. It doesn't mean that. What eternity means is that existence in this future world called Olam Haba has nothing to do with time. That's right, nothing. There is no such thing as past, present, and future. Because time itself is an illusion. It's an illusion, really. We feel that something is moving and going through. Nothing is really happening. What's happening is that I have the ability to change. Time is about to change. And since change moves from point A to point B, I feel like that's the past and this is the present. But what's really happening is change is happening, and that's dynamic. In Olam Haba, there is no change. You cannot change. You are, whatever you establish yourself in this world is what you have in Olam Haba in the future world. But you have that in a new type of existence. It's an existence which fundamentally has nothing to do with time and space. We cannot conceive of what that is. We have no idea what it means to exist without existing in time and existing in space. Okay, and of course the Gemara points to that in Brachos. Ayin lo saw. No really eye has ever seen this Olam Haba, and it doesn't mean, what do you call it, for some people, it means for everyone. There is no one that exists, whether you're human, or whether you're a malach, no matter, you could be the highest malach, matat, whatever the story is, they have no idea what Olam Haba is. The ones that are closest to the Bonisham have no concept of Olam Haba. Because a concept where existence has nothing to do with time is not. But that's what it is. So the real question is, why did the Bonisham do this? Why did the Bonisham create two different domains so that the physical world precedes this eternal, non-time related world? What's going on over here? And there's a certain answer that the Chazal give us, the Zohar gives it to Yerushalmi and so on. But it's never discussed. It almost doesn't appear in Kol HaTorah Kula. But it is the single most powerful thing of all. I've studied Hashkafa for 40 years. I have never seen an idea that's more powerful than this, because it explains why there are two worlds. Why there's a physical world where we have to do certain mitzvahs, we do a certain avoda, certain mitzvahs and so on. And then there's a future world where in some way we benefit from that. And the name of that problem, and what it says fundamentally, is that we have a problem. When the Baruch Hashem created us at the outset, or at the beginning, we have a problem. And that problem is called, in Aramaic, Nama de Ksufa. I'm sure that most of you may have heard of that and so on, but Nama de Ksufa means bread, Nama means bread, Ksufa means shame. Bread of shame. And the simplest idea is this. This is the simple way that we try and understand that. The Zohar itself doesn't really explain what that really means, okay? The only one time that I've really seen an explanation, the Ramchal says that in one word. He says what Nam Tzuf is a problem in bias or ownership. What does that mean? It means if Hashem gives us eternal existence, okay, what happens is I would become ashamed to receive it. That's it. Become ashamed. Why? Because I didn't do anything to get it. I didn't earn it. I didn't work for it. I didn't really do anything. So if I get this possibility, then what happens is I won't be able to appreciate it in some way. I will feel ashamed. Okay. And when I mean I'm not talking about me as a human being. I'm talking about me in what you people think is an neshama. So I start out as a neshama, okay, that's the current thinking, although that's not really true. I start out as a neshama, and the Baruch Hashem has a conversation with me, and he says, I want to give you eternity. I want to give you some degree the ability to coexist with me, okay, in what's called a semi-divine way. You're not a God because you have an origin, because I made you, but you have certain strengths that are divine-like. And I want you to coexist with me, and you are my children, and I love you. That's really what it is. So what happened was, all of us, you don't remember this, all of you, and I'm going to remind you of the conversation you had with Hashem, all of you objected. And you say, that's incredible, it's a wonderful idea, but I cannot accept what you have to give me. I cannot. So Hashem said to you, so to speak, why? Although he didn't say that. He knows why, very good. But in a way, if you had a conversation, you said to them, I can't accept it. So Hashem says to you, what's the problem? So you said, if you want me to exist eternally, like you, in that sense, without time or space and so on, then I have to be like you, right? Now, who are you? So that you said, you know who you are? You are a being that has nothing to do with the word to take. You're not missing anything. You're absolutely perfect. In other words, there's nothing missing in you or nothing that you need. You have nothing that you need whatsoever. So, in order for me to exist in a way that has certain similarities to you, what's called hisdamut, or certain similarities, you said, I have to be like you more, which means that in some way, I have to make my destiny myself. I can't receive it from you. If I receive it from you, that's the essence of a created being. You see it. And you want me to exist like a being who's a creator, like you. So therefore, I have to be a creator, which means I have to make my own destiny. It makes a lot of sense. So the Baruch Hashem says, you have a very good point over there. Okay? So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to let you make it. I'm going to let you make it. So what the Gemara seems to call Nam Sufa is this objection to the Baruch Hashem, that in order for you to receive and enjoy or appreciate this destiny of timeless existence, you have to be responsible for its creation. And then you feel, and that we assume that that's what the Ramchal means by bias. In other words, for you to appreciate eternity, if eternity means to be godlike in a certain way, okay, then you have to be like God, which means that you have to create it yourself. You mean? It makes a lot of sense. And if you don't create it yourself, you'll be embarrassed. You'll be ashamed in some way to receive something that you are not responsible for, right? It makes, okay, on a certain level it makes sense. Okay, in a certain way, we can understand that and so on. So therefore, what the Baruch Hashem said is, I'm going to give you a way to earn that, which is called in Hebrew an avoda. Okay, I'm going to put you in a situation where you not even know me anymore. I'm going to hide. We're going to play a game of hide and seek. It's a funny way to look at it, but that's exactly what he did. What he said was, I'm going to create an existence where you cannot be aware of me at all. And then you have to decide whether or not you want to have a relationship with me or not. There's going to be a part of you that will indicate to you that I am your father, that I am your creator, and that the only way you can exist forever is by being attached to me. So I'm going to give your desire to be attached to me as the avoda. You decide if you want to be attached to me. How do I know if you want to be attached to me? Because you want to develop a relationship. How do you do that? You do mitzvahs. You do the mitzvahs, Taryag mitzvahs, 7 mitzvahs, 1 mitzvah. I don't really care the number over there, but you've got to do something that I say. So if I say to you, move to the left, you have to move to the left. So if you move to the left, that tells me, that is your statement to me, fundamentally, that you want a relationship with me and that you hold me to be your destiny. And then you will be attached to me. And that attachment is eternal. So you said to the Baruch Hashem, how can you hide? How's that possible? So I have to decide whether I want a relationship. So the Baruch Hashem said, it's very simple. And he said, presto, suddenly you found yourself in a body and you only know anything through the 5 senses. What you see, hear, taste, and smell, and touch. You don't know anything else. So now in that guise, in that uniform called the body, you are no longer aware of the Baruch Hashem. Now the Baruch Hashem says to you in some way, okay, like Adam Rishon or Moshe, he says to you, this is what I want. This is the action that I want you to do to show me that the most important thing for you is a relationship with me. I'm putting it very simply, okay? Without all that heavy stuff. So it's a very simple idea on the fifth and so on, in that way. So you said, okay, I need to choose, and that's called the mitzvah. And the Baruch Hashem says, if you choose me, and if you do what I say you need to do, guess what? You will have created your own attachment to me, which is Olam Haba, and you will exist because of that attachment. So you did it. I didn't do it. You know what I mean? I had nothing to do with this. I'm just giving you what's called an opportunity. That's it. That opportunity is called the attribute of justice, or the mitzvah din, where you do the job, and God decides if you did the job, as opposed to doing the job for you. Now, that's a very simple way to look at it, but it's not that simple. It's quite powerful. So, but Nam-Niksufa, therefore, is an objection to God. It is an objection to Baruch Hashem, where you say to the Baruch Hashem, you know something, I can't accept this existence that you want to give me. No matter how fancy it is, no matter how many bells and whistles it has, if you understand what I'm saying, it doesn't do much for me over here, because it makes me ashamed. So that's the concept of bias. The concept of bias means that to avoid the shame, you have to do it yourself. Good. That's the way we understand Nam-Niksufa. And we understand that's why he created the physical world. He created the physical world so you can do it. So he doesn't have to do it for you. Now, no questions. After. So does that satisfy you? Does it really satisfy you? So the answer question is, on a certain simple level, satisfactory, but it never really satisfied me. And I felt that there's something about Nam-Niksufa which is much greater. Why? Because there's so much pain in this world. This is not simply a world where you do a job, you know what I mean? Where you do a job. The problem is if you don't do the job, wham! Or something like that. And when I mean wham, I'm not going to get into this. You know what wham means when the Baruch Hashem whams you? You know what that means? What they call hits you? If you really think about it, I don't know how many people of you know history. It's what they say in Shreklach. The Holocaust is a perfect example. That's got to be the greatest wham that the Baruch of God ever did. That's it. What does that mean? 6 million Jews were gassed and they were burnt as ashes, approximately, or whatever the story is. That is horrendous, really. So you say to yourself, is this all because I had to earn this? Is that what all this is about? They say to me, this is shtipnish. There's something wrong here. Something doesn't make any sense. And for the last 2,000 years, no more than that, 2,500 years, every philosopher worth his salt has been trying to answer the question, what is going on in human life? What does human life look like? A nightmare, fundamentally. If the Baruch Hashem wants to solve your problem of Nam-Niksufa, so is that worth it, really? You know what I mean? So make Olam Haba Nam-Niksufa. I'll take that. I mean, fundamentally, if my choice is to take that, or to be whammed in some way, something, I won't get such a big fat Olam Haba. Something, I'd rather have that, or something like that. But the question that everyone really asks about Nam-Niksufa is another question. You mean the Baruch Hashem could not avoid this problem? This is Kaviyachol. This is that being with, is anything too difficult or wondrous for God? No, not at all. So you mean the Baruch Hashem could not create a physical world, or he could not create a situation where there is no Nam-Niksufa? You mean here? So you hear what it is? It's the old situation where you say to someone, you know something? I don't want your presents, your honey, and don't give me your vinegar. I don't need it. And so on. So there's something about Namlik Sufa which almost sounds like a necessity. It's almost like Rebbeinu Shem could not avoid that, or he could avoid that. So the real question is, what really is going on? And anyone who has a brain, a cerebral cortex in his head, ask this question. You couldn't get around the problem of Namlik Sufa? I mean, Jews are notorious for getting around obstacles. You know, if we could do it, he couldn't do it. I mean, what's going on over here? So obviously there's more to this than meets the eye. But I realized something else. I realized why I couldn't figure this out. And I'm being honest with you. It took me about 40 years to finally answer this question. It did. 40 years. I've been working on this in the side of my head. Okay? You know, I also have to live life. But on the side of my head, I was working this. What is this? And I realized that if I don't get an answer to this, I really will never understand what Hashem is doing. I may play games and think that I'm a big chacham and make believe to all of you that I do know what I'm talking about. But I'm not happy with myself because I don't know what I'm talking about. You see, because everything that he does emanates from the issue of Namlik Sufa. So you see what I'm saying? And it took me 40 years to get the answer. I believe I have the answer. Now, why did it take me 40 years? And I finally realized why I took this. And I can't even to this day understand how I got the answer. If you will agree with me that I have the answer, and I'm not so sure that you will even understand what I'm about to say, I understood why I didn't get the answer. And the answer is very simple. Namlik Sufa is a problem in existence. But the existence that Namlik Sufa has an issue with is the existence before the physical universe. The physical universe exists in some way to take away this problem. But where did this problem start? This problem started when I first came out, what they call the Ein Sof, the Tzimtzum, or however you want to describe it. Then the problem appeared. So suddenly the Rebbeinu said, to solve the problem, we have to make a physical world, and that's really the Ishtalshelus. What the Kabbalah calls the Ishtalshelus, which is the creation of the worlds, all the worlds, is really to get down to the bottom called the physical world, so I can start to do my job. You see it? So, which means that Namlik Sufa is a problem that doesn't exist in this world. Namlik Sufa is a problem that exists in Olam Haba. But it's an Olam Haba that I'm not going to like. You see, because I'm embarrassed in that situation. But Olam Haba is an existence that's beyond time and space. How is it possible to understand a problem that exists in a place which we have never experienced? We have no idea what it is. When it says the Gemara, I am no Yortzait, the Gemara is really speaking about Namlik Sufa. Not only can you not understand what Olam Haba is like, you can't even understand what goes on in Olam Haba. Namlik Sufa is a problem that goes on in Olam Haba. So you see what I'm talking about. So what you would do normally would say, what? Teku. You know, or something like that. And I'm not even sure that Eliyahu Navi could answer when the Mashiach comes. I don't know that he can any better than us, in a certain sense. You know, he's also part of Olam Hazeh. He's a Ben Olam Hazeh, and so on. He hasn't seen Olam Haba yet. No one's seen it, so I don't know that he can answer him better. I have no idea. All I know, this is a very difficult situation. And I said to myself once, maybe it's a chutzpah for me even to say that I want to solve it or understand it. Honestly. You know, when I understood this, I said to myself, maybe it's a chutzpah to even think that we can answer that. Maybe it's one of those unknowns. You know, where Hashem says it's like a choik. Live with it. Stop, live with it. Trust me. Do what you have to do, and that's it. One day when you get to Olam Haba, then you'll be a shtik beser chacham, you'll be a little smarter, and then you'll understand that all this was necessary. That's the way I should have proceeded. But in a way, I am a chutzpah shtik in that sense. So I said to myself, you know something? Vinish tvi, who knows? You know, keep on hacking at it. Keep on working at it. So you thought that sugis were different in Shas, okay? But at least in Shas, when you learn Gemara, you're dealing with Olam Hazeh, you know? But when you're dealing with a sugi in Olam Haba, that's a whole different situation. And I don't understand how totally, but one day about 6 years ago, and all of you know I'm a traveler. You all know that I travel, right? Well, not all of you, but I've been to over 220 countries in that sense. So I've been to the entire world. One day when I was in the island of Madagascar, and I don't know why and so on, suddenly the answer started to unfold. You know, which I think. And then it took me several years to completely pull it out, because I realized I had to change completely the way I see existence. So, this shir is probably the most advanced shir that I ever gave. And I've given some real tough ones, okay? Because it's going to explain what I believe explains exactly what Na'am Sufa is really, and why it's necessary, and what avoida is. And it's going to sound a little bit, and I have to excuse myself, okay? This shir that I'm giving is for the cover of Ramchal. It really doesn't take you people much into account. I'm sorry about that. So I'm going to try and say something that I think we will understand, but I'm going to go to a different level of thinking, a level that you're really not accustomed to. You see, because it's completely out of your experience. But we're going to use some of the Mishalim, certain analogies and ideas in our physical life to understand that. I believe that if you've got any type of, if you're listening to me and you're intelligent, you will understand what I'm saying. Okay. So that's what I'm going to attempt tonight. And I ask you to have patience, because I'm going to tell you something that I worked on for 40 years, and you're going to get it tonight. Okay. There's got to be some kind of a schus to that, or there's got to be some kind of a masa or something like that, okay? In order to understand that, Sufa, okay, we need to understand something that's very difficult to understand. In fact, in the Kabbalah, they fundamentally avoid this. They fundamentally do, for obvious reasons, okay? In the Kabbalah, okay, when they talk about God, okay, they use two terms. One term they use is the word Ein Sof. I'm sure, have you all heard that word Ein Sof? Ein Sof literally means without end. Ein Sof, there's no end. And that is the term they use to describe Hashem. Okay. Then, in a sense, who are we? We are Yesh Sof. We have an end. Obviously, that's the dichotomy, that's the duality. He's Ein Sof, we're Yesh Sof. But the truth of the matter is Hashem is not Ein Sof without end. He's even higher than that. And I'm not going to explain that. But as far as Kabbalah is concerned, to many Kabbalah myself, Hashem is an Ein Sof. That's what he is. It's really not true. He's not an Ein Sof. The real name of Hashem, and the Ramchal says this in the Gross says it, is a word called Atzmusai. Atzmusai means just the ultimate substance. It's the ultimate thing or entity. And that entity created what's called the Ein Sof, which we feel is like God. We come from the Ein Sof. You see it. I'm not going to go into the nature of Atzmusai. I'm not going to go into it. You don't have the background information, but it is possible to have some grasp of that. But we're going to examine the one that's nearer to us, in a sense, the representation of the Baruch Hashem to us, who's right in front of us, and who we come from. So for all practical purposes, he is our creator. Okay? And that's called the Ein Sof. And what we need to do is examine the existence of the Ein Sof, which we kind of linked God in that kind of sense, Hashem, and us. What is the difference between the way we exist and the way the Ein Sof exists? Now, normally speaking, nobody will touch this. Why? Because the Ein Sof, without end, without limit, is incomprehensible. So if it's incomprehensible, there's nowhere to go. But the truth of the matter is, we can go there by a series of back steps, which the Rambam says is the way you approach when you approach Hashem. What is the back step here? What we want to do is we want to examine the way we exist, number one. And then we take the way we exist and ask ourselves, well, how does God relate? How does Hashem relate to the way we exist in this way, and in this way, and in this day? And what we do is we kind of go negative, and we say, well, Hashem doesn't exist like this, but how? Why? And we try and grasp it from a negative thing in its own. And there's a certain amount of information that you get. In mathematics, they do this all the time. It's called reductio ad absurdum, where fundamentally they prove something because they say if it wasn't true, then it would be absurd. So therefore, it must be true and something. But that is this kind of logic, and this logic, the Rambam says, will allow us to understand on some level who Hashem is. And I'm going to try and explain it as best I could in this sense. First of all, how do we exist? No, I don't believe any of you have ever thought about that in any way. Most of you think about fundamentally what's relevant. You know, you think about halacha, or you think about Torah, this and so on. But you know, very few, I don't think any of you have ever thought about the nature of Hashem. I mean, and that's it. Now, are we allowed to do that? So there's a pasuk. The pasuk, Hashem says in a pasuk, "Al tishalal hacham b'chas." Let not a wise man glory in his wisdom, or a rich man in his wealth, or a powerful man in his might. But if a person wants to glorify himself, he wants to give himself some cover. What does it say? Haskell v'yodei oisi. You need to understand me. That's your relationship with me. When you understand me, means what I do, how I do it, or something about who I am. When you have this chokhmah, you know something? I like you. So you say, I like you. In other words, as far as I'm concerned, that's our closeness. You see it. Now, fundamentally, most people don't do this at all. They don't even know how to do this and so on. But clearly, the Baruch Shem wants a greater familiarity with you, and the familiarity he wants with you is for you to understand who he is. Not some kind of mysterious being that we have no shaykhs to, and whose actions appear completely either unreasonable or irrational, unless we have a moon of b'tochon. The Baruch Shem wants more than that from you. So let's see if he can deliver. Let's see if he can deliver that and so on, and I'm going to try and do that and so on. So let's examine our own existence, okay? There's certain aspects about our own existence, okay? Number one, we exist in what's called the duality. There are two parts to us. In other words, our being, existence, has two parts, and we all exist in those two parts. What are those two parts? Very simple, here. Take this. This is a bottle, right? Now if I asked you, what is a bottle? What is it? In order to tell me, what do you have to do? You'd get a dictionary, right? And you'd look up the definition of a bottle, right? That's what you would do. You would look it up and it would say, it is a container, fundamentally. If you looked up the Norman Merriam-Webster dictionary, I haven't looked it up, but it would say, it is a form of container that's able to hold different things. That's what a bottle is for. It's a type of container. Good. So that definition tells me what it is. That's called in English a definition. But really, in the chokhmah of existence, it's called an essence or a mahus. A mahus comes from the word mahu. What is this? And it says, this is a container. That's what a bottle really is. It's a type of container that could be composed of different substances and so on. Once I understand the definition, I say, I know what it is. Now, you don't really realize it or not, but the way you understand everything in the world, and the fancy word for thing is called an entity. An entity is anything. A person, a table, Jupiter, the planet Jupiter, anything is called an entity. So the way I understand an entity fundamentally is how I have its definition. I understand certain specific bechinas or properties or characteristics or features that it has, and that tells me what it is. So I know the difference between a bottle and a cup, or a bottle and a table. Each thing has a certain definition, which is called an essence. Now, that's one thing. That tells me what it is. But does it have to exist? No. For example, in the 16th century, right, 1600, there was no such thing as a tape recorder. Didn't exist. You see, now we have a tape recorder. So just because I understand a certain idea doesn't mean it has to exist. It doesn't. So certain things exist and certain things don't. So that's an important concept. So therefore, an entity is composed of two things. One, it has a definition that tells me what it is. And it also exists, that it participates in some mysterious process called existence, which, by the way, has no definition, because it is the most fundamental property of it all. When I say this thing is, it doesn't really have it. What's called in English, it has a manifestation. It is, and so on. But the essence of this thing, which tells me what it is combined or connects to or is attached to the existence of this thing, okay, which is called its existence. So I take two ideas called essence and existence, and I put them together, and suddenly, presto, I have a bottle. But I have to have two things. I have to have the thing itself, its definition, and I have to have some kind of participation in a process called existence, whatever that is. And when those two things come together, I have something that I can relate to and understand. I think that's very simple and so on. There's something else about this. Just like this thing can exist, it can also not exist. In other words, this thing can either be or not be. To be or not to be. Why? Why is it that it's possible that it doesn't exist? Because if existence is added to the essence, it can also be subtracted from the essence. So if an essence has existence, it's there. If it has no existence, it's not there. So, in terms of existence, it either is or it isn't. And that's how we see all things, right? Something either is or it isn't. There's only two possibilities here. For some people, there are three possibilities, but those people need a lot of medication. What else do we see? What else is possible from this? Okay. And this is very, very critical. It could be not only one entity, it could be many entities. For example, this whole table could be filled with bottles, which means that the entity called bottle can either be one or could be 1,000. It's what's called multiple entities. Our world tolerates, like in this room, right? There are many tables. There's one table I understand, but wait a minute. Look at all these tables here, right? So that's called multiplicity. It's possible to have many of them as well, you see. That's another important feature about entities in our world, in the physical world. Another concept, and this is a very powerful one, is the concept called the border, or gvul, or geder. What is a border? This is going to give you a little hard time. A border means this. It means I can grasp something. Like, I see, why is it that I can understand this bottle? Because when I look at the bottle, I understand its essence. Its essence is composed of features, of specific things. It has a shape, it has a form, it has a certain material, it has a certain color, it has a series of different bechinas, or different, what we call, features or characteristics or bechinas. And I understand the essence of something by labeling all its features, you see. You see? Like, for example, what's the difference between a person and an animal? Okay, an animal is alive, so is a person. You see, an animal has senses, so does a person. But a person not only has these things, a person is not only alive physically with senses, he can think. An animal cannot think. It has a certain consciousness, but it can't think. So I say, oh, that's the difference between these two. But what I'm really thinking is that I can understand the concept of thinking. You know, which means that I can say the word this. Now, we won't say the word this, but this is like, oh, this book. What does the word this mean? This means is that I can actually identify it. I can understand it. I can comprehend it. This. Why? Because it has certain features that come together and give its definition. That's called a boundary. You see, if you can say this to something, it has a boundary. You can grasp it and understand that. The mind has to have that. Okay. So, that's what we are. We are a Yesef. It means we have boundaries. The word Seif doesn't mean end. It really means boundary. In other words, we are entities with an essence and existence that has a boundary and can be grasped by the mind. Simple. Now you all say there, well, I know all of this. So what is this guy doing and so on? Well, I'm not so sure that you know all of this, but in order for us to say something about the Rebbeinu Shalom, we have to understand something about the way we exist. Now, let's look at God, or the Ein Sof and so on, and examine him and so on. Well, this is a different being. How is it different? Okay. So the Torah says very simply, he's an Ein Sof. Ein Sof fundamentally means is that he has no boundary. That's what Ein Sof. What does that mean? It means there is no bechina. He doesn't have a characteristic, you see, not really. Such that he cannot be identified. You see, you have to understand something. You think that you have an idea who Hashem is. But in your mind, Hashem is a Superman. He is. For example, let's take Superman, okay? Superman is a person who's the smartest thing that ever was there. He's the most powerful thing that was ever there, and so on. He's the fastest thing. So we see him as a man who's super. Hashem is not a super, you see, because Hashem cannot be grasped. In other words, Hashem does not have chokhmah, wisdom, like we have, where you can understand this is wisdom. You can't identify it, you see it. Or this is life, or this is strength. He doesn't have this at all. What does he have? We have no idea. We don't know what this entity is like. It cannot be described because there's something about it that has no features. Nothing. It's beyond. And because it has no features, you can't say the word this, that he has this, that. You can't. You see it. He has no features. Although we know he's there, the only thing we know about him, we know obviously he's smart. We see what he does and so on. But you can't say he has wisdom. Because wisdom is a specific entity with certain features. And whatever wisdom he has doesn't appear in the way it does with us. That's why Hashem is incomprehensible. That's why he's called Ein Sof. You cannot apply the word this to him and so on in any fundamental way. Okay. What about his existence? Does he exist? Yes, he does. But he doesn't exist the way we exist in any sense. Why? Because he has to be there. That's called necessary existence. The Rambam calls what's called mechuyev hametziut. The Baruch Hashem has to exist. So we would say, what do you mean he has to exist? Why does he have to exist? We don't have to exist. Why does he have to exist? That's an automatic question, and everyone has that. The thing that in the end we don't understand about Hashem is why nobody made him. He has no origin, so he must exist. But that doesn't make any sense, because the existence is something which is attached to your essence, and either you have it or you don't. The Baruch Hashem doesn't have anything attached to him, and so whatever he is his own existence. In other words, he exists necessarily because his essence is existence. How do I know that? And because his essence, or like if I want to call him, you know what I would call him? You know what the only thing you could say to God, if you want to call him a name, you'd have to say, hey, Mr. Existence. It's not Mr. Existence. There's nothing that's called Mr. Existence. It's called a bottle that exists, a table that exists. But what does that mean, Mr. Existence? The Baruch Hashem says is, whatever that process is that gives you existence, I am it. I am it. This is me. So I don't exist. There's no separation between me and my existence. There's no two words. It's the same word. We cannot comprehend a being that is existence. Now you may say to me, how do I know that's true? Well, open up your siddur and look at a bracha. When you call God, you say Baruch Atah Hashem. Do you ever look at the word Hashem? What is the word Hashem in a siddur or in the Torah? What does it look like? It's the Hashem. It's the Havaya. It's the Shem Havaya. Havaya means existence. So you don't realize that when you give a bracha, you say, "Blessed are you, Mr. Existence." That's what the Shem Havaya means. You're calling him Mr. Existence. Well, what kind of name is that? You know, nobody's Mr. Existence. He happens to have the process where he exists. It's attached to him in some way. But the Baruch Hashem is not attached to it. He is it. We cannot comprehend that. It's beyond us. So that's another reason why we cannot understand him. So he exists, what they say in Hebrew is mechuyev hametziut. He exists necessarily because he is the process. And that's as far as we can go. So we realize that with Hashem, there is no duality. There's no two separate ideas of an essence and an existence. It's single. That's number one. Very different than us. Okay.
No, it's called makom.
Hamakom is called a place. He doesn't exist in a place.
Right.
He is
You
the
are
place.
makom.
Right. You exist in a place. He has nothing to do with place and so on. But I don't want to go into every name of God and so on. Let's go into the main one, the Shem Havayim. But there's something else about the Ein Sof, which is very important, which I've said. You know, it's not multiple. Why is it that I have many different bottles? Why? Because the essence of each one is separate from every other, is separate, and each one has its own existence. So I can have many of them. But what happens if you are existence? Now, when you think about that, this is not a small idea. What it means is, what happens if you are the only example of existence? Let's say, for example, before the Baruch Hashem made anything, let's look at him before anything was made. Okay? So the question is, what was he? Well, he was existence itself. But that means that he's the only possibility of existence. So he is existence. And existence is not something that's given to anything else. He is the existence itself. So when it says Einoid Milvadoi doesn't mean he's the only God. That's not what it means. Einoid Milvadoi means he's the only thing. Why? Because he's the only thing that exists. That's why he was never created. He is the thing. You can't create existence. It either is or it isn't. You don't create it. The definition of existence means to be. And if your name is Mr. To Be, you are be. There's no one that makes be. It is. So therefore, he has no creator at all in any sense. Because he's the process itself. Number one, he's the only thing that has that process. You can't have two. Because if two things were like God, then each one would have existence which is separate and attached to it. So there can be two of them. There's no two gods, because he's the only thing that exists. So therefore existence is only shaykh to him. The fact that we exist is not true. We exist because he made up a new thing called existence. He created something called existence as a process and said, no, nadach here, take it, and take it. But that's not his existence at all. He gave it to everything. So therefore we have many things. But it's in the Baruch Hashem's existence itself. There's only one type of that, and that's it. So we begin to understand something very different about him. And that's why he's so powerful. Why is Hashem so powerful? What makes him into a God? That's a good question, you know. Nobody asks that question because you don't want to be called a min. But fundamentally, if you want to be mechaber him, or you really want to relate to him, you got to say to him, what's the difference between you and me? Why do I have to listen to you? Who are you? And so on. And the answer is, the Baruch Hashem says, you know who I am? I'm something you can't even begin to understand. Nobody made me. I'm existence itself. And therefore, I'm the single most powerful thing that there is. Because I am existence, I completely control it. You don't control it because you borrowed. It's a mortgage. We relate to our existence like a mortgage. It's a halvah. It's an eternal halvah. We'll never own it. Because either you only own it if you have it. If you are it, then it's yours. If it's attached to you, it's a halvah. It's given to you as a gift. And you can't absorb it because it's not you. Your emes has nothing to do with existence, So the way you exist, the way it exists will never be the same. That's why he's so powerful. I just kind of, and not because he's a Superman. He's no shaykhs to anything that we have in that kind of sense. And he's not better than us. He's not better than us in quantity. He's not bigger than us, stronger than us, smarter than us. Nothing at all. He has nothing to do with us. The way he has these things cannot be understood, period. I think, are we kind of getting this? I'm going to move on. Okay, I hope that you're getting this. I'm moving really slow. You don't realize how slow I'm going. To kind of help you kind of thing. But you've got to understand something about the one you talk to.
How can you say that he's not smarter than us? He's the all-knowing.
Yeah. What does that mean? What does that mean?
How do you define that?
But all-knowing means, he's not all-knowing. He has nothing to do with knowledge. The Tikkun Zohar is very clear. The Baruch Hashem has no knowledge like we do, where it's a certain amount of information that he has as an attachment to him, where he learns. It's nothing to do with that. He doesn't have knowledge, because knowledge is something that we can understand and a person possesses. The qualities that God has is not something he possesses. He doesn't possess anything. He is everything. Whatever knowledge is in its core, he is the thing. There's no such thing that God is smart, as they're two separate things.
However you define smart, God is more powerful than that. He encompasses what we define as smart, but we have to use a different definition for it.
What I'm simply trying to point out is that when we talk about Ein Sof, it's incomprehensible, because he has nothing to do with the way you exist. And the one quality that he has that makes him so powerful is that he has no beginning. He has no origin. Nobody ever made him, which means that fundamentally he was always there. And if you are always there, you have to relate to your existence, not that it's given to you, or that you possess it, or that it's attached to you from the outside. It is you. We cannot comprehend what that looks like. And that's it. And it has no border. No border means what, fundamentally? It means that whatever he has, you can't say the word this to it. You can't say he is smart. He has nothing to do with wisdom that he is powerful. He lives. All the things that we say about him in the tefillas, they have nothing to do with how he possesses them, how he has them. Because we cannot conceive of it unless we talk about possession. God doesn't possess anything. He is the thing. And that's not comprehensible to us. Because in the way we see everything, we possess the thing. Even a malach possesses existence. Everything that God created, he created an essence, he created the process of existence, and he attached the two. Presto, you now are. That's the process. He has nothing to do with that process. Now, we just started on this. I'm not going to go into this and so on. But that's the difference between us and so on, us and him and so on. Now, there's something else which is important you need to understand. And now we're going to move into, in a certain sense, another category. I'm not so sure that this is the kind of share you would give at this time of the night. Okay? But something, I didn't make up these rules, and fundamentally, and we just have to do the best we can and so on. Okay? There's something else about a human being which is unusual. He's conscious. Or he's self-aware. What does that mean, self-aware? Self-aware means is that we have consciousness. In other words, I know when I see something, when I see this bottle, two things go on in my mind. First of all, I'm aware of the bottle, and I'm aware of me seeing the bottle. That's called self-awareness. If I close my eyes completely, and I'm not in touch with any reality, I'm aware of myself. I'm aware that I am. I'm aware of that. That's called self-awareness. And that self-awareness exists in something called the mind. What is that? Nobody really knows. But there's a certain area called the mind where my knowledge of myself is in that mind. And I know me. The fact that I say the word me is extraordinary, you see. But not only is there self-awareness that I know me, but I also know the awareness of you. In other words, there's something called reality. Reality and self are two things. The person is conscious, he knows that he is, and he knows that something else is at the same time. He's aware of two things. Awareness applies to the person, the self, and it applies to reality. There's like a double awareness of two things that exist in the mind. So I know, for example, that I'm holding a bottle, and I know that I am holding the bottle. Two dinim. Okay, and so on. So we say that human beings have consciousness, but a table has no consciousness that we know. A table doesn't know it's a table. It just is. It doesn't have the knowledge that it is. It doesn't have that at all, and so on. So human beings are unique, you see. They're unique in the sense that they know that they are. They know that they are. It's very unique and so on and so forth. But there's something very strange about self-awareness. I don't know if you've ever thought about it or realized it. Probably haven't, and so on. For example, all of you see me, right? You all know that I exist, don't you? But do you know really what I am or who I am? No. You really don't. You have no idea of my reality. Why do I say that? All of you say you see me. What is sight? What happens when you see something? You think about that. You know what seeing means? Seeing means is that my eyes, okay, receive light that bounces off you. There's an object or an entity. Light bounces off the object. It goes into my eye, and as it goes to my eye, it goes to the back of my eye called the retina. That retina sets up an electrochemical signal which goes to my brain. That brain then creates something called an image. An image. The image is what you see of me. But an image is not me. An image is what you create to represent me in your mind. How do you know what I am really? You don't. All you are familiar with, whether you see something, or for example, when I touch the shtender, it feels hard. But where is the feeling of hard? Is it in the object? No, it's in my brain. Because the nerves at the end of my finger touch the thing, okay, and it sends out electrochemical impulses that go to my brain, and my brain gives me the experience of hardness. But that hardness is in my head. You know, there's something about this, whatever it is, that when I see it, I have an image of it, and when I touch it, it feels hard, and so on. But all of these things, the image of the hard, seeing it, smelling it, all of these things is what the brain does with some kind of light or some stimulus that's coming from the outside. There's something outside, but the way you know it is only what your mind says, this is what it looks like, this is what it tastes like, this is what it smells like. Your brain is creating an image. That's all it does. You see it. It's like a camera in a way. Your mind is a camera that creates an image. You see it. But the truth is, all you see is the photograph. You have no real idea what is that thing that produced those images. Not only you don't know, you will never know. Because you are not in contact with reality. You are only in contact with your mind. I hate to say this to you, because all of us want to believe in that there's something outside, you know? There may be something outside. You have no idea what it is. You will never know what it is. Because anything which is outside of you is simply known to you in the image that your brain says, this is what it looks, this is the image, this is what's called looking, this is what's called smelling, tasting, hearing, touch, image. The brain creates this, but you say, wait a minute, but that's the thing. No, that's not the thing. That's your head, which means that reality, and this is shocking people. They say, what are you talking about? I see this thing, I'm touching it. No. What you're doing is you are mentally experiencing in your mind what your brain is telling you its description. And it's not describing the thing, it's describing its own way of what sight is. Which means that you are never in touch with outside. Not really. You're only in touch with inside. You know, the self is aware of itself, and the reality or the world itself appears to the mind as an appearance where the brain says, that's called sight, that's what's called looking, that's what's called tasting, that's what's called smelling. But that's the most you'll ever know of something, which means that you have never, and you never will have connection. Not only that, it's very simple. You know, like if I look at one of you, for example, I have no idea who you are and so on, and I will never know, because the only one who knows you is you. The only one who experiences you as a self is you. I can't experience yourself. The only thing I'm experiencing is what my five senses say to me, and they say to me certain images, 5 different images that they put together in my mind, and they say, that's you. That's an image representation, you know. But I have no idea what your self is like. I'll never know, because I have no contact with it. I have no contact with anything outside of me, which means that all reality fundamentally is experienced as a mental event. That's all it is. It's in your head. That doesn't mean there's nothing outside, but it means you will never be in touch with that. Never. Every person is an island that exists by himself, and there is no union of this island. There's only one way that I know what you think. If you don't say anything, then I know what you think. There's only one way I know what you think, and what's that? It's when you talk to me. Talking is the only way two islands connect. But it's like they connect to some wiring. Talking is the wiring between all us, which are all islands. Shocking in a way. See, we think well, there's a world out there, we're connecting with out there, you're connected to your friends, to your wife, and you're not connected to them all, you're an island. Your wife will never know you, because she has no way to experience yourself. She doesn't know what your self-awareness is like, and she'll never know. She sees you, she can hear you, she has ways of representing you. You are nothing but a representation, period. And that's it, in somebody's mind. And you can never go beyond that. I hate to depress you, if that's what, I'm withdrawn. But I'm telling you your MS. I'm telling you what it really is. You cannot begin to understand who the Bonisham is until you understand your limitations. Now there's something else which is very powerful about the self. Okay, what is that? You ever notice something? When you're looking at the world outside, right? You're always being aware of it in reference to who? To yourself. You know, it's yourself, what's in your mind, is the center of everything. It sees everything. All reality exists around self. You know from self-awareness in your mind. And that's all you are. So there's a certain centrality of self. And in a certain sense, you don't realize this because you're not in touch with that. You actually could say something almost like Ein Oid Mulvadi. There's something about the self which is so unique and so central to its relationship to everything outside of you that it can almost say Ein Oid Mulvadi. In other words, I am the beginning and end of all existence. Because all existence in some way filters through my mind. So it's like I'm the computer that gets it all. You mean? And that's how we all feel. You see it. I don't know anything outside of me. I don't know you, but I know me. And from the moment I'm born to the moment I'm gone, I will never get beyond self. Self is me. I'm self. And I have awareness. Mazel tov. And my awareness says me as an object, you, cup, table, and so on. But everything is always seen in reference to me, self. And that's it. You're only in touch. You are only a self that fundamentally translates and knows everything in terms of self. And you never get beyond that. You understand? You know, it's very limiting in a way. And I'm kind of stripping you of your powers in a certain sense, where you want to feel like you're connected and you're powerful and you're in control. You are in nothing, because you have no way to connect to anything outside of self.
What about through speech, like you just said?
Yeah. You don't connect it.
You can compare notes.
Yes. But I don't. Comparing notes is all it is when I hear speech. I hear speech. So I hear, my brain interprets sound as coming from you. But I have no idea who you are really, other than the sound that my mind is telling me is coming from you. You're not sound. I don't know if you're...
Your brain converts those things into ideas.
It doesn't convert, it represents, right. Sound is a representation of your voice, but it's not, it's an image of you, but it's not you. I don't get closer to you because you talk to me, but in some way, the sound I'm able to understand as something coming from you and something you're trying to say to me. But I still have no connection to you really. In that sense, you know, why is Lashon Hara so powerful? Why? Why is Hashem so disturbed by Lashon Hara? Because Lashon Hara is the only thing that connects people. I mean, Lashon, language, voice, talk is the only thing connect. Without talking, there is no connection to anybody, nor will there ever be. The only way I even know that something is there is I hear that in something called voice or talking. That's it. Otherwise, I'm never in touch with the thing itself. I don't want to belabor that in that kind of sense. If you got it, you got it. If you don't get it, it's also all right. We'll just kind of move on. And these are the problem is it's not so abstract. The problem is that your life has nothing to do with what I'm talking about. Your life is a fraud. Because what it does is, it gives you certain powers that you think you have, that you have nothing, you have none of that. But, there is only one milah that you do have. Okay? I've put everything down. I've stripped you of your ability to know reality. One, I have done that. I've shown you fundamentally that the only thing you can know is the sound that's coming from something out there that you able to interpret in some way, in that kind of sense. And what I'm saying is that the only thing you know is really self. You know yourself, and what your mind tells you about yourself and what's out there. That's it, it's your mind. So I've stripped it all, but now I'm going to re-empower you and tell you something which is an absolute shock and so on. We think that consciousness or self-awareness is what humans have. That's true. But we think that entities are either conscious or they're not conscious, like a table. Mm-hmm. So we see consciousness or self-awareness as a specific feature of certain types of entities. And there are entities that don't have self-conscious or self-awareness. Like a plant doesn't know that it's a plant, or a table doesn't know it's a plant, and so on. But that's not really true. And that's why it's so hard to understand what God is doing. Because you have no idea how powerful you are. Why is that? How do you know that you exist? How do you know that you exist? How do you know that you exist? How do you know? What tells you that you exist? Does anyone know? How do you know that you're here? Sounds like a funny question, but it has an answer. How do you know? In one word, because you have awareness. If you close your eyes, right? You close your eyes and you say, what am I aware of? Oh, I'm aware of me. So which means an amazing thing. Awareness is your existence. In other words, the only thing that exists is a self. You're not a person that has a self. It's not true. You are a self. And when the Rebbeinu Shem first made you, you are an entity of a self that has awareness. And that awareness says that you exist. There is nothing else. There never was anything else. And I'll get to that a little later down the line. So. But what the Rebbeinu Shem made was a self. We don't even know what that is. What is a self? What does it look like? What does it smell like? What does it taste? What is it? We don't really know. Why? But it is in us. When I say to you, and I say your name, and I say, who are you? You give me your name. But I say, what are you? What's the word? The answer is, I'm a self. That's all. The only thing that Hashem ever made was a self. And that self exists not because he gave it existence. The Rebbeinu Shem didn't give us existence. A self automatically exists because a self is involved in the activity called awareness. It's your awareness of me that says, I am. So your existence comes from the fact that you are aware. This is a new kind of existence. We always thought that existence comes from the fact that I see something, or I taste something, or smell it. It doesn't come from that. It really comes from awareness. That's why everything is mental.
Power of
Wait,
awareness.
please, 1 second. I don't...
I gave it to you.
Excuse me. Please, could you wait till later on? I don't want to just get involved in this thing. I just want to move on in that sense. Look, if you can understand this, great. If not, it's not easy to understand this because I'm giving you a completely different way to look at yourself. You are a being called self. That self is involved in an activity called awareness. That activity of awareness says, I am. That's it. It says, I am. It doesn't say that there's anything else. It doesn't. But the minimal thing that the self says is, I am. I'm aware of what? Of me. Therefore I am. Which means that existence is nothing more than self-awareness. It is nothing else. Any other idea that we have existence is not true. It was made later on in a different way. So the one thing that the Rebbeinu Shem made you at the outset was a being who fundamentally is self-aware. Now we can understand who the Ein Sof is in a way. The Ein Sof is also a self. That's what he is. The Baruch Shem knows that he is. So the Baruch Shem is also a self that is self-aware, except that he has no boundary. In other words, we don't know. He knows himself not through an activity called self-awareness, because that's a gedder. That's something you can say this, self-awareness. You could say the term, you can define the term. You see it. So the Baruch Shem knows himself not through self-awareness, but in a way he's a self that knows himself in a way that we don't know. But he's exactly what he made, but it's a greater version of it. Meaning that he is a version of self where he doesn't know himself from awareness. He's a self that knows himself, we have no idea. And he's not really a self in the way we are. But that's the symbol to its own. Now you need to understand that. That's your elikus. If you want to know when you say chelik elakami mal, Chazal, you're chelik elakami mal. What does that mean, you're chelik elakami mal? What are you a chelik of? And the answer is, fundamentally, you know yourself from something because you are a self. Self exists through its awareness. That is the only kind of existence that is. So the Baruch Shem didn't have to make you. He really didn't. He never really created you. You're not created as something new in that sense. Your physicality is so on. But what the Baruch Shem did is something called Tzimtzum. What Tzimtzum means fundamentally is that the Ein Sof, that the Ein Sof has no gevul. And then suddenly the Ein Sof, in some way that we do not comprehend, was able to take, in a way, a part of himself. We don't really understand how it is. And he said to himself, who I am, I have nothing to do with boundary. You can't say the word this. There's no feature that appears to you as in me. But I'm going to take a part of me, so to speak, like a chelik of me, and I'm going to give it a boundary. So we are really the Ein Sof with a gevul, or a boundary. That's why we're a Yesef. And that's it. But we're very similar to him. Meaning that he didn't create us. What he did was he partitioned us away from us, from him. So we come from him. We have a certain similarity to him in the sense that we are an entity similar to him, except that we have a gevul. So we can be recognized and known. In him, it cannot be recognized because it has no feature at all. And that's what Tzimtzum is. Tzimtzum fundamentally means is that he partitioned himself in a certain sense by reducing or in some way dealing with not his nature. In fact, what it says in reading the Kabbalah is that the Tzimtzum doesn't apply to him, it applies to his or to his light. So that's a second step. What Ein Sof did was create something called an or. We don't know what that is. And from that or, suddenly he kind of shaved it off. So suddenly it took on a tzura. That tzura is you. You're an Ein Sof with a tzura. That's it. That's the elakami and so on. Which means that fundamentally, the Baruch Shem never made you is a new thing. The only new thing you have is that you have a boundary. You can be identified. But the essence of what you have is self. You are a being of self that knows itself and it exists. But this is a very important thing about existence. Why do you know yourself? You know yourself because your awareness tells you that you are. Awareness is what a self does. All a self does is aware. I'm aware. And that awareness is me and so on. What that means is very interesting. Nobody gave you existence. All the Baruch Shem did was make a self with a boundary and automatically exist. The existence of a self is like its backpack. It is the thing. It's attached to it. It's not given to it. It's what a self is. A self is a being that's aware. It exists, and when it's aware, it exists. It knows that it is. That's called existence. It has a manifestation of some sort, which means that all the Baruch Shem fundamentally did was really give you a manifestation by making you something like he is, but with a boundary. But he never gave you existence as such. What he did was, he simply partitioned you off from him as a being called self and gave it a boundary. And that's it. So you know yourself through self-awareness. He doesn't. You see. But we have a similarity to him. That's what Chazal mean by Elokah. I hope that I really don't know if this is coming across. It's very difficult to understand, in a sense, what I'm saying, because it's so new, or it's so different. And that's why, fundamentally, we don't understand what's going on. Because you don't even know who you are. you really have the slightest idea who you are. You're covered with a body with 5 senses. And you have no idea that the central part of you is simply the self that's in you that knows itself. That is you. There's nothing else. Everything was put on like a suit of clothes, and we'll talk about that other thing. You see what I'm saying? So existence is nothing more than self-awareness. And the only thing that the Ein Sof ever made was a self. And the self contains its own existence, which means an amazing thing. It's necessary. And that's what's very funny. We exist necessarily. We do. Why? Because since we are the same thing as our existence, we are our awareness. That's what we are. And if we are our awareness, we are our existence. In a certain sense, you can almost say Einod Muvadi. In a way, you can talk almost, not totally, because there's still a difference, but you can talk a little bit as if you're like a little God. And that's why you're so dangerous. And that's why you're so powerful. You see, you think that the Baruch Shem gave you free will. He didn't give you free will. Free will comes from who you are. If I'm a self, and I exist for my awareness, and I'm central, then there is nothing outside of me except me. And therefore, my nature is to be beyond anything. When you're beyond anything, because everything is like what? Everything is separate. It's like nothing else is really there except self. What happens is that you're free. When you have no nature, you're free. It means you're free to see yourself in whatever way it is. You're not controlled by anything. The self of a person is not controlled by anything in that sense. So therefore, you already have free will. As soon as you have a Isdamus, as soon as you have something which relates, similar as a parallel to God in some sense, you automatically have free will. So the Baruch Shem never gave you free will. What he did was you have it because the elevated position that you are. And that's what it means that you're godly. A self is godly. It is. Because the self separates himself from everything in existence. And the self says the only truth that it knows. Me. Me. Me is the ultimate truth of a self. And that's its existence. It is. Me. And that me is not controlled by anything in that sense. It is godly in that way. And that's what Chazal mean, that you're an Eloki in that sense. I know it's not easy. I apologize for that and so on. It's taken a long time to kind of get what's really going on here. But what's happening is here, so all of us are in a physical state, not only a physical state, even in a ruchnic state, are deceived by the godless ha'adam. You have no idea how great you are, because you, in many ways, you are an Ein Sof that has a border. That is unbelievable. You are already godly in that sense. But of course, I mean, the Baruch Shem had to mitzamtz himself. He had to partition an aspect of himself and give you a boundary suddenly. But before that, you were part of the Ein Sof. You were part of his self, whatever that was, without a boundary. So you were not separated from him. All Simpson did was kind of cut you off from him and say, hey, you're kind of on your own over here. You look like me. There's things you do that are similar to me, but you have a border, so we're not really connected anymore. And you could say me now. You could say me as yourself. But you come from me in that fundamental way.
But you're not talking about Tzmuso, of course.
No.
Okay.
That's a different thing. How can I talk about Tzmuso? Can barely understand Ein Sof.
So there's no ego. Ego just loses the...
Forget about it.
We're Netzach too. We're also
We haven't even gotten to Nam L'Ksufa. Nam L'Ksufa is a problem of the self. It is. It's an automatic problem of the self. And it's called a Yichud variable. There's a certain word called Yichud. What does Yichud mean? So Yichud means, we say Yichud means number one. One, there's only one thing, it's Yichud. That's not what Yichud means. Yichud means is that you are so closely connected to your existence that there's no separation. Yichud means that you are your existence. When you are your own existence, you're the only one that experiences it. And therefore you're the only thing that can experience it. That's what Yichud is. So all the Baruch Shem did was compromise. What the Ein Sof did was compromise, not compromise, but what he did is, you're a downgraded version of the Ein Sof. You're a downgrade. Like you have an upgrade, you're downgraded. He downgraded himself, not that he was affected, but he downgraded that. So fundamentally, you have this kind of a thing, and so on and so forth. What is Namlik Sufa? What now? We can begin to understand a little bit what Namlik Sufa is. You see, in fact, I've told you enough information. If you are nothing more than a self, and you exist through your own awareness, and that's all you have, and in a certain sense, that's all you ever will have. You will never have anything else, because that's what you are. What is Namlik Sufa? Namlik Sufa is a contradiction that's caused by Tzimtzum. Why? Because in essence, what a self says is, I am. I am. I know, I'm aware of myself, and therefore I am, and so on. What that says to the self is that I'm an Eloki. But there's a problem, because the self has a boundary or a border, like something else. It feels that there's me, and there's also not me.
Still maneuver.
There's a not me. You see, this is the problem. When you have a border, what is a border? A border is something that divides something into two. So as soon as the self knows itself through a boundary by what's called self-awareness, it suddenly has a feeling as, you know something? I am. But you know something? I have a border. So therefore there must be an outside. There's an inside and there's an outside. The inside-outside is a dilemma suddenly, because what it says to the self is that what? You're not an Eloki. If there's an outside, then there's something that made you. It means you're not the only thing that exists. There's something outside of you. What? I don't know. But it's like I feel there's something else. There's another side to the border. Every gvor has two sides. There's another side to the border. And that border is called an outside. That outside means is that I'm not my own existence in a way. That's something, I share existence with something else. If I share existence, then I am not existence. I lose it. I have a chalisha. When you give something a border, you give it a chalisha, because suddenly you become aware of an outside, that there's something else. You don't know what it is. It's not the awareness of an other, it's the awareness of outside. And an outside means, it means that I share existence with something, because whatever's outside also has to do existence. But I am no longer supreme. The only way a self is supreme is when there is no outside. When I'm the only thing that exists in my knowledge, I'm supreme, you see. But if there's something which is outside and also exists, it means I share it. If I share existence, then existence is detached from me. It's something which is given to me. Once I feel that it's given to me, so it can be given to someone else, then suddenly I have a chalisha, and that's busha. You know what shame is? Shame is the feeling that I don't deserve to exist, or I feel what's called in English disempowered. I don't feel powerful. I don't. I feel weak. Why do I feel weak? Because I've suddenly compromised my yichud. The way I relate to existence is no longer the same. Before, when you don't have a boundary, there is nothing outside of you. And you don't even have the feeling that there's an outside, because you don't have any order. There's no duality. So therefore, there's not an issue. The Ein Sof doesn't have a problem in Namlik Sufa, because it has no border. There's no duality that it has. It is the only thing that exists. But what happens if suddenly I have a border, so I feel that there's something on the other side of the border? You know what I mean? Then I have an outside. If I have an outside, it means that my existence is also possible for something else, which means that I'm sharing it. If you can share existence, you no longer are it. You simply have it. There's a difference between saying, I am existence, as opposed to, I have existence. I have existence, you also have it. It's something which can be experienced by a lot of things, and that's the physical world. So what Tzimtzum does to this Eloki called self of the Ein Sof, by giving it a border, creates the problem of yichud. Now the self suddenly feels that that is an outside of itself, and somehow that is the fact that it has to share existence on some level. It doesn't mean that there is anything outside, but the mere fact that you feel there's an outside automatically is a chalisha in the power that you feel about being a self. Now, I don't know if you got that. That's Namlik Sufa. Namlik Sufa is a distortion in the yichud of the Yortzait, which is a self. By giving it a border, suddenly it doesn't feel like it is its existence. It feels like it has existence. And that's an incredible drop. Now, to all of us, we're happy just paying our bills. I understand that. I mean, I feel sorry for us in that sense, you know what I mean? But that's on the physical world. But you don't realize, when you were first created, you were exalted. You came right out of the Ein Sof, right out of the Ein Sof, in a process where suddenly you now say, hey, I am. But I am is already a border. Because if you can say I am, okay, the fact that you can say I am in that sense is a border that I can identify. It means that, I am, but that means that there's a certain I am not. There's something about the other side of that border. And that is a compromise on this incredible power that a Zulasa has or Yosef has. That's Nam Sufa. And you can't avoid it. That's why you can't avoid Nam Sufa. Because since the whole way we construct you, okay, is from the Ein Sof, by giving you a border, that border creates a duality. That duality is what's called a chelek and a ka mima. Look at two words. You're not a ka, you're not a God. You're a chelek of God. Chelek means a border. You're a portion that you feel. That means that you are not total existence. You see, that's Nam Sufa. And that's a compromise in the Yichud, not in the Yichud of the Ein Sof, but when the Ein Sof was Matzamtzam you and gave you a border that you suddenly know yourself, you also know not yourself. Not yourself is a disturbance in your power or the Yichud of your power, and you no longer feel like an Eloki. What do you feel like? You're ashamed. Shame is nothing more than disempowerment. It means suddenly you feel like there's something about me which is distorted or disfigured. That's what shame means. You know, when a person feels ashamed, he doesn't believe he deserves to exist. He wants to hide under the table. He feels that there's something in him which is weak and distorted. The Zolose, as soon as it's created, that symptom feels like a distortion. But there's no other choice. Because when you want to create something else, the Ein Sof has to, in some way, partition you on some level. Which means that there's two. There's you and the Ein Sof. That too now gives you a border. The Ein Sof doesn't have a border, you have a border. How does the Ein Sof do that? I haven't the foggiest idea, of course, because we don't know how the Ein Sof does anything. But we know what you are. You're a duality of me and not me. Me, not me, is Nam Sufa. So there's a very big problem. You want to be you, and you can't be you. You know what I mean? And so therefore, what the Baruch Shem says, we got to get rid of the problem. We got to give you a way to masakin it. You got to fix it. Because if you don't fix that problem, your chalisha will never allow you to feel the simcha of being me. As long as you think that there's something outside of you, okay, where the Baruch Shem is outside of you, you're going to have a problem. So the Baruch Shem says, how are you masakin it? You suddenly have to realize that the Baruch Shem is not outside of you. Whoa! He's not outside of you. There is no duality. So this is what Olam Haba is, and I'm going to tell you what I believe Olam Haba is, the statement. And we cannot truly experience the emes of this until Olam Haba. But this is what the statement is. The statement says the following. This is what the Baruch Shem says to you. I am you. I, Ein Sof, God, whatever you want to say on that level, I'm you. Not outside of you. I am you. It is. But you're not me. That's Olam Haba. In Olam Haba, we can experience what appears to be a contradiction. Because wait a minute, how could you be me and I'm not you? Make up your mind. If A equals B, then B equals A. That's the law of commutation or the associate sums. How could A be B, but B is not A? That doesn't work. That's Olam Haba. In Olam Haba, we don't say, there's no God outside of us. We don't feel like he's outside of us. We feel he is us. Your mamas feel like he is you in some way, even though you know you're not him. That's a stira. That stira is the ayin loy v'asa. When the Gemara says, when the ayin loy v'asa, it says that there's a contradiction. There is a contradiction in the way we experience Olam Haba that cannot be understood.
Why can't it be understood? There are molecules and there are atoms.
No.
An atom is part of a molecule, but it's not the molecule.
No, that's an organism.
So it's the same idea. What you're saying.
If A equals B, then B equals A. That's it.
A is the sum of all its parts.
No, no.
We might be one part.
No, that's
It's clearly the same.
no. We are not. The Rebbeinu Shalom is not. We're not the sum.
The whole is a sum of all its
No,
parts.
that's not true. Olam Haba says, the Rebbeinu Shalom says, is that I'm not the whole and you're my part. No. Because if I'm the whole and you're my part, there's still an outside, but it's the outside of an organism. Like, for example, my body, I have trillions of cells, right? But each of these cells is an individual, but they all work together as a team to accomplish the same thing. But, so, in a certain sense, the body is not the arm, and the arm is not the body, but they work together. The concept of an organism is the concept of a team. That's not Olam Haba. In Olam Haba, the Rebbeinu Shalom says, we have to get rid of the experience of me as outside of you. That's it. You see, when you don't even feel me outside of you, I am you. There's such an achdus that can't even imagine. But in spite of that, you are not me.
So
But
there's
wait
a
a minute.
contradiction.
Of course, it's a contradiction.
So
It
there's
remains.
a-
Excuse me. That contradiction cannot be resolved in Olam Hazeh, because Olam Hazeh is not based on that kind of a relationship which exists in Olam Haba. What Olam Hazeh is based on is something called an organism. The closest we can get to the Rebbeinu Shalom is to feel like him and I are connected in a way. We can't get to a point where we're not connected as an organism, but we are the same thing. He is me. I don't feel he's outside of me. I don't feel he's a separate being. You know what I mean? The yichud that I have with the Rebbeinu Shalom is absolute. You see what I'm saying? But we can't experience. That's what it means, I am a Rasa. Because that kind of experience doesn't follow from mathematics. It's not an Olam Hazeh. It's not a physical type of concept. So, but in this world, the closest we can get to that concept is an organism. And how do we approach an organism through the mitzvahs? When I do something that the Rebbeinu Shalom wants, fundamentally, right? Then I'm saying, why am I doing what you want? Because you and I are an organism. We are connected. You're not separate from me like two separate entities. You know what I mean? We're connected like every cell in the body and so on. That's the highest madrega we can reach in Olam Hazeh. And that madrega is called Dveikus, clinging or attachment. But Dveikus is not Achdus. Achdus is not that, I'm attached to you, but you are me. We don't grasp how does that work? That level of Achdus is Olam Hazeh. You see, it cannot exist in a world of dimensions of time and space. We cannot get that kind of achdus with the Rebbeinu Shalom. But fundamentally, with Namlik Sufa, the problem is that Namlik Sufa is a disturbance in creation. It's a disturbance. But there was no other way to make you had to be given a gevul. As soon as you're given a gevul, bingo, you have a duality of me, not me. That's Namlik Sufa, and that's a chalisha automatically, which has to be repaired, or else you cannot truly get to Olam Haba. You have to repair. The Rebbeinu Shalom says, I can't repair that for you. That's a problem in your existence. You need to do it. You may say, how can I repair it? That's my nature. No, you don't have a nature, because you're a self. You're the center of everything. You can fix yourself by redefining yourself. You can develop this, which is you can develop the experience of me. But there is no not me. But wait a minute. If there's a me, there has to be a not me. No. Olam Haba is when you feel me without any not me. And that's impossible. That's Ayin Lirosa. You see what I'm saying? It's not simple to think in a sense. But that's what it is. So you have to masakin that. So what does the Rebbeinu Shalom do to help you masakin it? So I'm going to move a little faster. So the Rebbeinu Shalom, so this is in the world of Chesed. As soon as the Rebbeinu Shalom,
Why couldn't he make that?
because he wants to make a zurasa. The essence of you is that you are identifiable as not being him. You're separate from him.
Same way in any perfection, why can't we make that?
Because the only one who can do that is you. You see it. You're the one who has to decide that he is you. In other words, why? Because your sense of yourself after symptom is, wait a minute, there's me and there's not me. So suddenly I feel weak and so on. But the only one who can take away that weakness is you. Understand, the Rebbeinu Shalom never made you. The Rebbeinu Shalom never made you. He made you by partitioning you, so you have this tzura. He didn't create you.
What do you do to take that? What do you do?
What's that?
What do you do to take that away?
Oh, that's what I'm going to talk about. So what I'm going to say is a very powerful chiddush. Also, a very powerful chiddush that well, you can understand it. So What did the Banishim do to get rid of this problem? So what he said was, you have to decide who you are. So the tachlis that we have to do is what's called definition. Who am I? What is my yichud? Am I a me with a not me, or me without a like? Who am I? So the Banishim says you can decide because you have no nature. Fundamentally, you're the center of everything, and therefore you have free will. There's nothing outside of you in any real sense, and therefore existence is yours, and you can decide this. You have to decide how you exist. So the Banishim said, "This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you two options. Namik Sufa is an experience. When the Banishim first made you, that's called Chesed. But Namik Sufa comes along with that. So you have to fix yourself fundamentally. Fixing yourself is called din. The Banishim says, I will create a situation where you can fix yourself. Good. So what did he do? So what he did was very interesting, okay? Here, give me your glasses. This is what he did. Very strange, okay? He gave you a pair of glasses. That's what he did. What does the self do? The self is self-aware, right? That's all. But it has a disturbance in how it's aware of itself. So then he said, you got to fix the way you're aware of yourself. How? He said, watch, put on the glasses. Put on your glasses. Now. Tough eyes. What are glasses? What are glasses? What are glasses? Glasses are fundamentally two lenses, right? Glasses are not your eyes, right? Your eyes see. All glasses do is determine what your eyes will see. They don't create sight. Sight belongs to your eyes. But yeah, so let's say I give you glasses. One lens is green and the other one is blue. I put on the glasses and I cover up one lens and I say, what does your sight tell you? So it says, well, first of all, I see things. I see other things. You know. Suddenly you see things and you say, and all of them are colored green. Existence is green. Then I say, take this on that. And then you say, well, existence is blue. So in other words, it depends which lens you're looking at. The lens in some way will color your eyes, so you'll see whatever's outside in a certain way. You mean? I can determine how you see something through your glasses and so on, like a telescope, which allows you to see things far away, or a microscope to see the small. It's your eyes that are seeing. The eyes don't change. It's the lenses that change. Do you understand? So the Banishim gave you two lenses, glasses, and he put it on your head. As soon as he did that, something absolutely shocking happened. Shocking. And when I say this, it's going to be hard for you to so and so forth. What he did was, he gave you two ways to see existence. Remember, what is the problem? The problem, is there a not me or not? That's Nam Tzufa, that's the Chalisha. So the Banishim says, I'm going to give you one lens. One lens is going to suddenly show you something called reality, or not outside, but other. That there are other things, and it's going to show you those other things in a way that even though they're separate in a way, but they're all connected like an organism. One lens, when you look at it, you're going to see different things called reality. The glasses suddenly allow you to see other. Something which is called the awareness of something else. Not the awareness of outside, but the awareness of other things, entities. And one glass, when you look at these entities and so on, he says, wow, even though they're all different entities, but they're all connected. You see mamish the connection of everything. You see an actus between all entities, right? And that's what he says. He says, wow, everything's connected. Well, and I feel connected to so that means we're an organism. Whatever it is, I see all existence as organismic, as connected. Then he says, now look through the other lens. You look through the other lens, and in the other lens, nothing is connected. Everything is separate. It has what's called strangers. You see something, I don't know what this, I've never seen it. They're strangers. Everything is independent and completely disconnected. You see, what does that say? That reality, which it says, is not organismic. There's no connection between everything is separate. You know what I mean? Everything is separate and separate. Nothing is connected. There's no actus with anything. You see what I'm saying? So when you're looking through one lens, for example, and you see another person, you feel the connection. You see, we're really an organism. We're not two separate things. You understand something about the body. Understand? The body is an organism. You know what that means? That means that every cell in the body, your brain knows your heart cells, even though it never meets them. There are no strangers in the body. Every cell knows every other cell. They know. How? They never met them. Because an organism is such that every unit in the body works together. So they all know. As soon as they see each other, I know you, you're a kidney cell. I know you, you're a bone cell. They know each other because they all sense the wholeness and each one's relationship in the whole. That's an organism, you see. Now, how do we know, for example, that every cell in the body knows every other cell? How do we know that? It's simple. If a person needs a kidney and they give that person a kidney from somebody else, what does the body do to it?
Reject.
What? How does the body know to reject it? Because the body said, this is Mishmana and kidney. This is not my kidney. What's it doing in me? How does the body know what kidney belongs to it? Because the body knows every cell in the organism what belongs and what doesn't belong. So if the body knows what does belong or doesn't, it knows what does belong. We see from this that the body has a sense of every cell in it, knowing every other cell, even though they never met. There's no such thing as a stranger cell in the body. But that's only when you look at through one lens. So one lens shows you reality. What it does is it amplifies, it extends the concept of outside to other, and suddenly you see other things. But you see connection. In the other lens, you see other things called reality. There's no connection. So you say, I'm alone. I have nothing to do with anyone. I exist by myself. Okay. And that's what it is. And then the Baruch Shem says, you choose which lens will become your awareness. Which one? In other words, when you're looking at reality, what is reality? Is it organismic or is it not? And you have the choice. You determine what are you part of. You see what I'm saying? So what the Baruch Shem did was he took the outside and made it into a reality of different things, but he has two different sources or forms of it. One reality is connected, it's organismic, the other one is not. And he says, you choose one of the lenses, not both, one. And the lens that you choose will become you. Because what's going to happen one day is after you make your choice, I'm going to take off the glasses and your choice will become your eyes. If you choose the lens that says organism, your eye sees organism. If you choose the lens that say not organism, disconnect completely, your eyes will see everything disconnected. Do you understand what I'm saying? Now, the question is, what are those lenses? Oh, that's what Din did. See, you have no idea what. Do you think Din is what? Something the Buddhism judges you on Rosh Hashanah and Kippur, and then you're all in trouble. Din creates a reality to mimic what Namdik Sufa does. One part of you, which is the Eloki, feels connected to the Baruch Shem, that there is no separation really. It's only your mind. The other one says there is a separation. And what the Baruch Shem says, you choose which one will be your opinion. You can then control your Namdik Sufa. Because you can change it. If you accept that everything is organismic, it means you feel that I and you are connected. And in Mahaba, you will feel completely the connection. If you choose that a reality which says nothing is connected, then that will become your emes. And that means that you become a Metzias of Namdik Sufa. You've given in to the Natni part. You've defined yourself as a Natni. You see, if you think everything is disconnected and everything is separate from each other. You see what I'm saying? So the Baruch Shem took Namdik Sufa and aggravated it so that it became a reality of two different types. You need to choose both types. You've got two lenses. Yourself, the real part of you, is placed into a makom where it has glasses and it sees both. Does anyone know what these lenses are?
It's a Toby Yetzirah.
No. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, but that's not really, it's not true. It's not the Yetzirah, not really. But that comes from something inside of you where you want to take away your chalisha. The Yetzirah and the Yetzirah are two impulses that want to restore your power. Namdik Sufa disempowers you. You see, so you can restore that power either through a good way or a bad way. You can. And I'm not going to go into that. That's the concept of Yetzirah. But what are the lenses? What creates reality and what gives you the illusion of either all reality is connected or it's separate? What? So that you can choose that and define it. What do you think does that? What is the name of the lens that says everything is organismic? It's a lens.
The Neshama.
Right. The Neshama. You're not the Neshama. There's no such thing as a Neshama. There's no such thing as Ruchnius. Not really. Ruchnius is a reality that says everything is connected. That's all Ruchnius is. It's a hakara that everything is connected. When a person dies, you know what he's shocked? He suddenly realizes his connection to everything in the Bria. He sees his connection to every neshama, to Rabbi Akiva ben Yosef, to Rabbi Meir. He feels the connection. He sees it. It's like part of him. And he says, oh my God, how did I think I was separated? How come I only looked out for myself, for me? How did I do this? He didn't understand the achdus. Well, the neshama is the lens that creates a world called ruchnius, where what's seen is an achdus to everything there. So what's the name of the other lens? If the neshama is the lens of organismic view, what's the name of the lens that says, what? Guf. Gashmius. Gashmius is a lens. The guf is the lens which, when you look through the guf, when yourself moves its awareness into the guf, everything is different, which it is. Right? Look at everything wrong. Do we see connections on anything? No. We see connections in position. We see tables put together. Or like, if I never saw you on the street, from my guf, when I look at you from my guf, when myself looks through the guf lens, and I see physical reality, and I never met you before, I have the slightest idea who you are. You may not know who you are. You and I are connected at the hip, fundamentally, because we're from the same thing and so on. So how come I don't know who you are? That's the guf. So the guf is a lens. Gashmius is the reality that comes from the lens of guf, that demonstrates existence as everything is separated. Because the Baruch Hashem says, is this what you want? Is this how you want to define yourself? Or the neshama. The neshama is a lens that suddenly creates a reality called ruchnius that shows the achdus of everything. And the Baruch Hashem says, that's the emes. What do you want to put? What shita do you want to suddenly become your consciousness? So we see an amazing thing what the real structure of a person is. A person, and I have to say this, a person doesn't have a neshama. A neshama is not a person. A neshama is a lens. All it does is create a certain view of reality. Who is the person?
Who does the choosing?
The self.
What's the vocabulary for the self?
You are a self that is aware.
No, the
The self.
Then who?
We
We know
not,
there's a neshama, we know there's a guf.
You're right, excuse me. We do not know. If I said, what is this like? Imagine this, for example. Let's say, for example, okay, and then he puts on, let's say, a shirt and pants, and then over the shirt and pants he puts on a coat, right? Then I say to the person, who are you? So he says, well, I'm my coat. And you say to him, you're not your coat, take it off. So he takes it off. What's underneath the coat? The suit. So he says, I'm a suit. And you say, you're not a suit, take it off. He takes off the suit, and I'm sorry, and he's got his underwear. And then you say, who are you? Say, you're not underwear, take that off. And what the person is this guf, where the other things are overlaid on him, but he's none of those things. These are all clothes, these are malbushim that he wears. It's the same thing between a neshama is a malbush that the self wears so that it experiences reality in a certain way. The guf is a lens, the whole experience and so on. I don't want to go, again, what is the self that does that? I don't know. What is the end?
There must be a term for that self. We define the two lenses, there must be a term that defines the
It's
self.
not about muscle.
Is it the brain? Is it
No, it's not. It's nothing in your body. It's an entity called self.
There must be something.
It doesn't exist in time. The self does not exist in time and space. Time and space only exists in the worlds created by the neshama and the guf. Both the Gashmius has time, past, present, future. Ruchnis has time, past, present, future. Because Gehenna is 11 months. Ruchnis also has time. Ruchnis and Gashmi both have time. And they also have space, because two malachim are separate from each other. So there's space. You see an octus, but it's not a total octus and so on. Time and space is in reality. And what shows you reality...
But in the type of literature, there must be a term that defines...
What's martial term for self?
Excuse me, I understand the question. What the Kabbalah calls is really... they call that a neshama.
They call that a
Yeah, but that's right. But
that's not what you're
no, it's not. The primordial, it's a primordial neshama. It's neshama-like, because what it is Namek Sufad, you're an Eloki. So the Eloki means that fundamentally you feel the center and you're connected to everything automatically. But in a world where there's a reality, that Eloki sees the world like a neshama sees it. But the neshama is also a lens that replicates what the self knows as one part of Na'am Sufa. The other part of Na'am Sufa is there's a Natmi. And the Guf is a lens that suddenly creates a reality that resembles that. It's a deception. It's an incredible deception. And you don't even know the deception even after you die. Because after you die, you become a neshama. You're a self stuck with the lens called a neshama. The only difference between life and death is simply which lens. Before Adam sinned, the neshama and the guf, the two lenses were merged. So he could see through both of them at the same time. Except, even though they were both merged, he could see a reality that's organismic or completely separate. And he didn't know which way to choose it. That's the madrega of Gan Eden. Gan Eden is a madrega in the lens configuration, where suddenly he saw existence in two possible ways. After the Chet, the two realities separated, so that you could no longer live in both at the same time. Other Rishon before the Chet was never supposed to die. He didn't know what death was. The Baruch Shem said, if you sin, you will die, which means you cannot live in two lenses at the same time. You can only live in one lens at a time. And because you chose the sin, you will live into the physical world. And in that world, you will live in this reality. You will also know the reality of the lens, but you will not know it strongly. Because your neshama is already separate. The two lenses are separated. Now, what is a Navi?
Why is it Nefesh Elokai?
Please, 1 minute. A Navi is a person who lives in the Guf lens, but is able to visit the Neshama lens. Why is it? That's what Nevuah is. Nevuah is a person that can visit. He can see through the other lens, only when he goes into a kadema. Why? Because he can't live that. He would die. That's what Ramchal says. He really dies. It's a form of death. A Navi is a form of death. And he goes into a deep tabernacle, except Moshe Rabbeinu, and so on. And that's really what it is, because he cannot live in both, because of the Chet of Adam Rishon. He lives in the world of the Chet, which is the Guf. But he can visit the world of the Neshama. But after that and so on, we no longer have Nevuah, we have Ruach HaKodesh, which means our ability to visit the other lens is weaker and weaker. Till now, we have nothing. We are aware a little bit of the other lens of Achdus and organismic, but very little, barely there, because we're almost at the end of time.
So we don't have two lenses.
We always have two lenses.
How are we supposed to pick two lenses when we have
Because the lens of the Neshama is, you don't see reality in it, but you do. What's the difference between the eyes and the mind that thinks? When the eyes look at reality, it sees two separate tables. But the mind says, these, even though they're separate, they look separate, they're really the same thing. The mind is me'achid. What it does is it looks at the tzara shava between everything and sees what's called the essence. And it says there's something called this table and that table, and then there's something called table. The general klal called table. The mind is the last remnant of the neshama. The mind is the part of the neshama that sees, even though reality looks separate, but the mind is able to see the achdus of all separate things, but only in the mind you see it. That's the last residence of the neshama. So the neshama sees everything ba'achdus. In its lowest form, it's the mind. You see, in its highest form, it's ruach hakodesh nevuah. It feels it just doesn't realize the achdus as a thought, but actually as it's almost.
The mind also interprets the other lens. How do you know that everything is separate from the mind?
But the mind that interprets the other one has a sensation, an image, a sight. A sight is not the same thing as a thought. I don't know if you realize that. A sight is, I see this.
It's stimuli, which the thought...
A vision is a sensory vision of something, and everything is separate visually. But the mind, the intelligence, the rational, doesn't see visuals, but it sees images, and it sees the actus of everything. It knows that every one of these things is a table, and therefore it's one thing really. It's a table, it's the cloud. Sight cannot see cloud, it only sees pratam. In the visually, everything is different. In the mind, even though it's different, visually, conceptually, it's one thing. That's the neshama. So the neshama's last vestige of achdus is reasoning or logic. That's where the Yetzer Tov lives. But the Yetzer Hara lives in the guf, where everything is separate, and therefore I'm separate from God. He's him and I'm me. We have no shaykhs to each other. You see, but what I'm really saying is this is a very important thing. We're deceived. You see, no, this is what I believe is the absolute truth. This is Namik Sufa, and this is how we resolve it. But nobody knows. You don't know this. Because even when you die, all you do is you still have glasses, but your glasses becomes a monocle in a certain sense, where you now see with one lens. You can also see the guf. The neshama is still connected to the guf, even though the guf is disintegrated. But it still does. But fundamentally, you never really know that you are a self that's behind the glasses, right? Until zichuch starts. Zichuch is the Rebbeinu Shalom saying, you know something? We're getting rid of reality. We're going back to where it started. Because you chose achdus, okay? So we're getting rid of reality. You know, and first we get rid of the guf reality, and now we're getting rid of the ruchnistic reality. Because in its real essence, okay, reality doesn't exist. It's something that the mind produces, that the Rebbeinu Shalom is saying, I'm going to want you to choose between two different existential possibilities. Reality is nothing more than an existential appearance. You see, reality looks this way, it's a certain way, existence looks like everything is separated, that's called physical reality. When existence looks like everything is connected, that's called spiritual reality. Reality is simply an artificial appearance of what existence looks like, so you can choose who you are. But it's a deception. That's why what I'm saying doesn't make any sense at all. Because the real you is the self, right, that has this issue of who are you, me or not me. Like, which one is Gova? Is the Chelek main part of me, or is the Elokim Mimar? What is the Ika of me, the Eloki or the Chelek? What's binich? A Chelek Elokim Mimar? What's the Ika? Is the Chelek the Ika, my separation from the Rebbeinu Shalom? Or is the Eloki the fact that I'm from him and he is me? What's the Ika of me? That's Namlik Sufa, because the border gives you a duality. So the Rebbeinu Shalom says, I'll give you a choice. I'll make two realities that represent two possible different points of existence. You choose. But the truth is there is no reality. Reality simply is created so you will have a choice of what reality do you, or what is your existence? Tell me. So when you choose ruchnis, like you do a mitzvah, and you say to the Rebbeinu Shalom, you know what I mean? I listen to your will. You know, you're me, you're my creator, you're my father. You and me are like, there's an achdus. Yisrael v'Yaraisa kuch bichatu, and so on. So what happens is, in the end, by zichuch, is that all this changes. After the year 6,000, it starts to move upward. What happens, please? All reality starts to disappear, number one. And then what happens is the glasses are shut down, and all that's left is self. And we don't even know who we are at that. In other words, you don't even know what you're going to look like in Olam Haba. All you know is you are either neshama or you are guf. These are temporary situations that force you to choose. That's it. But when it's all done and done, Olam Haba, which is the year 10,000, is Ayin also. Why? Because you don't even know who you are, that you are a self that has nothing to do with reality. There's no such thing as objectivity. You mean something outside of you, number one, and the hasaga of that self, or the awareness, is what? God is me. He is me. That's Olam Haba. And that's a tremendous correction of Namik Sufa, because the Rebbeinu Shalom does not exist outside of you, so there is no outside. What the Rebbeinu Shalom says, you are capable of reaching a madrega of awareness, where even though you feel me, there is no not me. Unbelievable. Now, what is that called? What is that called? What is it called? The ability to show me that there's no not me. In the physical world, what is that shita called? If I have the ability to see that clearly, what is that called? I'll tell you something, a very chiddush. That's called the Shekhinah. The Shekhinah is not God. You have to understand something. You have nothing to do with God other than you come from Him as a board in Ein Sof. That's it. You have no way of knowing Him. The concept that in Olam Haba you will see His achdus is untrue. You don't see His achdus. You see nothing. How could you can't grasp Him whether you're in Olam Hazeh, whether you're in Ruchnius, Olam Haba doesn't make a difference. Because your being always has a me. If you have a me, you cannot understand a being that there's no not me. It's impossible. So then what is it? All you understand in Olam Haba is your Eloki. Suddenly your Eloki is not contaminated. It's pure. You realize that God is me. That Eloki that you possess, that's fixed, is called the Shekhinah. How do I know that? How do we know that? The Shekhinah is you. It's the Chelik Eloki, it's the Eloki in you that tells you who you really are and your Isdamus to the Baruch Shem. Because it says, what? What was the first appearance of the Shekhinah to Klal Yisrael? The Beis HaMikdash, the Mishkan. But you remember what it says? The Mishkan is not a valid form of the Shekhinah. The Shekhinah doesn't belong on a Mishkan or on a Beis HaMikdash. The Shekhinah doesn't belong in a house. That's ridiculous.
Novavi Mishkan.
What?
Novavi Mishkan.
V'shachanti b'soicham. What does that mean, b'soicham? It means the Shekhinah is your consciousness. It's in you. What do you mean it's my consciousness? It means the Shekhinah is the part of you that's the Eloki. And when that's clear and tall and beautiful, that then you and the Shekhinah have merged. That's it. Your new state, called the Tikkun of Nam Ksufa, is fundamentally what? That you are an Eloki and Emes without a duality, and therefore that's your Shekhinah, that's the Shekhinah in you. But you don't understand God better in a sense. You do, in a sense you don't. You're not aware of Him better, you're aware of yourself. The only thing that you accomplish in Olam Hazeh is who you are. You never know God. Never. Because the Baruch Shem is outside of anything you could know. Halavai, you should know yourself. The whole struggle of Olam Hazeh and Ruchnius, Gashmius, whatever you want to play with, is the struggle to know Vus Benich. Who am I? Am I an Eloki or am I a Chelek Eloki? When you are Poshet Rabbi, when you solve that problem, okay, in the sense that you know the Shekhinah, and that's it, you know yourself, that's the concept. And you see it in another statement of the Gemara. Gemara Brachos. It tells you what Olam Haba is. Sadikim Yoshvim, v'itvoseim b'rosheim, v'nemem b'zirashina. What does that mean? What is that? So let's look at it. Sadikim Yoshvim. Sadikim are sitting. What does sitting mean? It doesn't mean that they're sitting. It means they're static. In other words, it's describing you what's going to be in Olam Haba. In Olam Haba, you're sitting. You're not moving. There's no movement. There's no growth. It's over. It's over. You are what you chose. So tzaddikim are yoshim. That's what's called the static matzav of Olam Haba. Good. V'itosayim b'vosheim. And your crown is on your head. What crown? What's the crown? Magzeh is achor liyoshna. The crown, fundamentally, is the Shekhinah. You know what I mean? In other words, it's really you. It's the Eloki part of you that's now is your symbol. It's your badge. Your badge, your Torah, or the crown on your head, your Malchus, is your consciousness of what? That you and the Baruch Shem are one. The Nene, and then your Nene from what? From the Shekhinah, which is the part of you, which is you. Why? Because now you're whole. There's no Nam Ksuf anymore. You are an immistika and that's Olam Haba. Olam Haba is the ability that a person replicates the Ein Sof in a boarded fashion without the issue of Nam Ksufa. And that's what the Ramchal means by Bailis. What the Ramchal means by Bailis is not that you have to earn something by doing something. It's not true. You don't earn anything. You don't do anything or earn anything. What you're doing is you're fixing the disturbance or the dysfunction in the consciousness of self so that it doesn't have a duality or two different ways to look at it. You see it. That's Bailis. Bailis doesn't mean that you own it. Bailis means is that you are it. A baal is not something, in our word, a baal is something you own, as opposed to a soicha, something you rent, or something like that. That's not what bailis means. Bailis means is, you know something? Bailis means is you don't own it, because it's not outside of you. It is you. That's real bailis. The greatest bailis you can have is not if you own existence or you possess it, it's if you are it. When you say, I am existence, that's bailis as opposed to, I have existence. I have existence is eternal tzchiris. I am existence is a magret. That's Olam Haba. You have acquired your own existence. You've made yourself into a different Metzias. The Baruch Shem doesn't reward you like, oh, you did this, here, Nasdaq, I give you $100 for filing all the names alphabetically. It's not what goes on. The Baruch Shem says, fix yourself. And if you fix yourself, you will become a being that is a Baal, meaning you will become that Metzias of Olam Haba. You don't earn Olam Haba, you become Olam Haba. But you never masig the Banisham. You have to understand who he is. You can't play with that. You see, the Banisham is a being, okay? And I know what I'm doing. I'm going to tell you the difference between Atzmusai and Ein Sof. I don't know if you can understand it, and I'm going to masbra, but I'll just throw that in. If both are unbordered, and we have no shaykhs to either, it is Atzmusai that makes the Ein Sof. And it's the Ein Sof that's mitzamtzum itself and makes us the Zulatzai. So what's the difference between the Ein Sof and Atzmusai? So very simply, you have to say is what? Don't touch this. You can't touch this. You mean? You don't even know the Ein Sof. But there is a thing. Why? Because this is the thing. When you look at us, for example, the Banisham never made us. We are not a bri of Yesh Me'ayin. What's Yesh Me'ayin is the physical world. That's Yesh Me'ayin. Because there was no reality. But you, the self, is not a Yesh Me'ayin. You're a Yesh Me'yesh. What's the Yesh? You from the Ein Sof. All he did was partition himself, kaviyach in a certain way, so suddenly you have a border, so you appear to be separate. That's all it's on. But what about the Ein Sof itself? Well, the Ein Sof was made by Atzmusai as an intermediate step between the Atzmusai and you. The Banisham himself, the Atzmusai, cannot make you, because he has no shaykhs. He has no shaykhs to even not having a border, which means the following. If I say, you have a border, good, one thing. You don't have a border. But if you don't have a border, you are still in the concept of border. Not having something is still in the arena of border, except that I don't have it. But there's a musib. That's the Ein Sof.
What do you mean that can't make it? He
Excuse
can do whatever he
me.
wants.
Excuse me. Let me finish.
Yeah.
Let me finish. Atzmusai has nothing to do with border or not border. It has nothing to do with the concept of border. That existence is absolutely unknowable. You understand? It is even negatively doesn't even apply to him. It is absolutely unknown. That's it. You know something? We can scream at God. We can complain. We can do we can be enraged with God. But the problem with God is simply this. You cannot be smarter than that which has no shaykhs to either border or not border. You cannot compete with that being. You can't compete with him not only in terms of his power, but in terms of his godless. You cannot even be shy of his godless, because he has nothing to do with anything that you have, even a non-border. You see it. So you may say, what's the difference between Atzmus and Ein Sof? And the answer is this, which I believe. The Ein Sof exists necessarily. He must be, because he also comes from Atzmusai. But the entity called Ein Sof doesn't have to exist. However, Atzmusai made the Ein Sof, he made the entity. And even though the entity exists in a certain way that has under the border, the entity was still made. The Ein Sof is still a Chiddush compared to the Atzmusai. Atzmusai doesn't exist necessarily. Atzmusai is that the entity is necessary, not the existence. We exist, I don't know if we exist necessarily. We do, because we ourselves, that is our own existence. But with the border, the Ein Sof is not an entity, okay, and it doesn't exist in any way that we do, but it has a non-border. But it's an entity with a non-border. That's the most I could say about it. It's not subject to words, because you can't say the word this. No word can talk about it, so it's an entity without a border. That's the close I can get. Atzmusai has nothing to do with any of them, so what is it? Atzmusai is a necessary entity. In other words, the entity must exist. The entity itself must be, not simply how it exists or not. I don't know if you got that or not, but it's a higher madreg of necessity. We're not talking about the necessity that it must be, with the necessity that there has to be such an entity. Because you see, we think of an entity and its existence as two separate items. They're not. The principle of yichud means that in its highest form, okay, the entity and its existence are so one that you cannot distinguish between entity or essence and existence. They have such an actus that we cannot experience on any level any kind of separation. And that's Atzmusai. With Ein Sof, already has a slight something, you see, because it was Mechudish. So it has a slight outside without having an outside, because there's no duality. So the godless of the Banisham is that he's a necessary entity. And we cannot go beyond it. That's unknowable and incomprehensible. It's absolutely incomprehensible. It is absolutely powerful. You know, it's not easy for you to understand this. If you really work on something, if you understand this, you'd be geschrocken. You really would. I mean, you couldn't say, you can't say a kind of word against them. Because there's no way to compete with him. You cannot compete with a being that has no border, it has no non-border. You see, there's no way to compete with that. We have no hasaga of what that is. It's beyond anything that we can conspire. We will never know him. What's amazing is the Baruch Shem says, which is incredible. The Baruch Shem says, I made you and I love you. What? You love me? Is this a joke? This is the biggest joke of the world. That you made me because you love me. The Baruch Shem doesn't love you. Why? Not in the way that we love someone else, because there's no duality. There's nothing outside of him. So he had to make us first, and then he says, well, I love you. What do you mean? I made you because I love you. Yeah, but we weren't there. You didn't love anything. We didn't exist. You know what I mean? When you exist, you can love me. We have no concept of what the Baruch Shem really does. We only know from what's called Yitzoni what he does. What he does is he makes this construction where he makes the Ein Sof, which is no border, and from the Ein Sof, he makes us with a border. But the definition of us is we are an Ein Sof with a border. Shocking. That's Chelek Elokam Imal. And as soon as you make an Ein Sof with a border, bingo, you have Nam Ktsufa. Because you've got a duality. And we have to reconcile that. So suddenly, Din kicks in, it makes two olamas a lens, and says, now, choose and so on, and we choose and so on, and that's really what it is. What I have not discussed today, which I really want to do, but I am happy I just got this far, is Rachamim. What does Rachamim do? Okay, that's an incredible thing with Rachamim. That's where the whole action really takes place. All history is Rachamim, interfacing with Din. But it's 12 o'clock, and people are tired, and so on. I really wanted to go into the madregas of Olam Haba. The concept of Olam Haba has madregas, which never existed before Rachamim. In the Midas Hadin, Olam Haba only has one madrega. You either make it, or you're gone. And that's
How can you be gone? You just become you're Ein Sof. You can't be gone.
That's what that means. Simsum is reversed, your border disappears, and you go back to the Ein Sof.
That's so bad?
You obviously don't like it. You don't like it. It's a cling obviously. So I don't want to go there. It's a reverse. Your job, you understand something? Your job is to reverse Simsum. You don't realize that. Because Simsum, when it made a board itself, you're too far away from Ein Sof. So I'm saying, get rid of this duality and move further back. So the whole avoid of Klal Yisrael, the avoid of the Menanushi, is to reverse Simsum, so that the Baruch Shem does not appear as outside of you. That's the essence. It's a problem of yichud. You've got to fix the yichud thing that you have, which is twisted. Namak Tzufa is a twist in yichud. How you experience yourself. Either you're dual or you're singular and so on to it. You've got to fix that. You do that by reversing Simsum. That's what the Baruch Shem says. Reverse yourself. That's what he means. You know, to reverse self, he has to then create lenses, reality, the whole thing and so on. Rachamim is something else. Rachamim comes and says, you know something? I don't like the fact that Olam Haba only has to be or not to be. I don't like that. You know what I mean? You know, because I'm going to lose everybody. Rachamim allows you to survive, because what Rachamim does, it says, I will allow you to reverse Simsum in steps. So maybe you can't reverse it completely, but even if you do partially, that's your Olam Haba. Rachamim allows an Olam Haba to exist. And give me 10 minutes, and I'll tell you the madregas of the Shamas, or the madregas of self in Olam Haba based on Rachamim, and you'll get it. What Rachamim fundamentally says, and I'll do this in 10 minutes. Okay, it's a quickie. What Rachamim does is, I'm going to change Olam Haba so there's madregas. What's the madrega? The way you experience self will change. If you do a lot of sins, you can't experience Olam Haba, the thing, and so on. But I'm going to make Olam Haba allow a certain self to exist, okay, without claiming Nam Ksufa. In other words, part of your Nam Ksufa will destroy you. It eats you up. So you're suddenly cut in half. Your sense of self is cut in half. What does that mean? I don't really know. But it means you no longer experience yourself in such, like a self really. You experience yourself, but no longer with that incredible Eloki. The Eloki becomes shvacha, because the Namitzut that you've made becomes a surgical knife that cuts self in half. So now you have half self, what you had before of whole self. Now, I'm going to give you a mushroom for that. I'm going to give you the mushroom of that. And look, you know what? If I want to replicate myself, right? I mean, I want to clone myself, right? How do I do that? Well, it's simple. One thing I could do is I could fragment myself. In other words, if I can't do the job as a whole person, I'll cut myself in half, so to speak, and half of me, the two halves, will become what I used to be as a whole. I'm a fragment. It's one way to keep me in business is to cut me up, and fragments now represent me. But I'm still in business, in a smaller version. That's called a fragment. That's after Adam Rishon was the only neshama that was total. When he made a sin, after him, his neshama was fragmented, so there are pieces. Now it used to be one guy, pieces, and each piece has its own, these are madregas, equal madregas. Then what happened after that? Okay, there was a lot of chatoim, so the Baruch Hashem said, we can't fragment you anymore, because if Namik Sufa starts to go after you, it'll annihilate you. So we have to make a new concept of self. How do we do that, okay? Not a fragment, because a fragment is still me in two pieces. What I do is I look in the mirror. I look in the mirror and I see my image. And the image in my mirror has consciousness. So I can talk to the image. It's amazing. But it's only an image. So the shaila is the image me, it's not me. Well, it's not me in terms of the way it exists, but it is me because I can have a conversation with it. So in other words, I clone myself as an image, not as a fragment, but as an image. That's a lower madrega, which Rachamim allows. Rachamim allows an olam haba, where every self is an image. You know what I mean? But let's say a person can't even be zocheh to that. You know what I mean? Like a moisa. A moisa is ein chelik lolam haba. So a moisa needs to disappear. Mm-hmm. But the Baruch Hashem has created, okay, and I'm not going to go into how I know this or what. He has created a new concept where even a moisa can get olam haba. Rachamim has gone to such a madrega in the Gvos Mashiach, he will allow a moisa to have olam haba in certain ways. How? What's lower than an image in the mirror? An image in the mirror barely exists. And the answer is a shadow. If you stand by a light, then the light reflects on you and produces a shadow. That shadow doesn't exist like an image. But the Baruch Hashem can give your consciousness to a shadow. So you are a shadow self. Wow. So you have a fragmented self, you have an image self, you have a shadow self. The shadow self is what all those moisim will become. Olam haba. It's still olam haba, but you're a shadow. That's all that's left of you. You know what I'm saying? But at least you have something olam haba. I don't know if you get what I'm saying? You have a shadow kind of clone or distance, but you're a shadow. You're barely yourself. You have some knowledge there's some self-awareness, but it's barely there. It's like one step away from getting rid of completely of symptom. It's one step away, of reversing symptom completely where there's ibor or neither. It's a very low level. But the racham of the Baruch Hashem, the chanoisi asher ochoim, the vichamti asher racham, is so unbelievable, and the Baruch Hashem has such an incredible love for who he created that he can actually stretch rachamim. He can stretch it so that suddenly whole selves become half selves, become image selves, become shadow selves. It's incredible. You see, you mean? Like for example, if Olam Haba is a movie, right? So the ones who do the mitzvahs and are good, they see the movie, they sit in the chair and they watch the movie. Olam Haba is a movie, let's say. But let's say you're not zocher to sit in the movie. You can't do it. You don't have enough self to do that. So the Baruch Hashem says, something, you can't see this movie. But I'll tell you what I'll let you. I'm going to let you go to the projector and I'm going to take two wires and put the wire in your brain and put the other wires to the projector. So the electric impulses of the projector that puts the movie on the screen doesn't go on the screen, but what happens is it goes to your brain and you can see the movie as a series of electrical impulses. But that's also a movie. Every electrical device is in an oscilloscope which produces a sine wave. The sine wave is the geometric representation of the movie. The sine wave in an oscilloscope of a movie is the movie, but it's in the form of waves. That's also madrega olam haba. So what the Baruch Hashem says fundamentally, he says this: the ones Yidden who are taka ovdim and tzaddikim, they see olam haba like a movie. They see it with the eyes. The ones who are not zoicha can see olam haba not with the eyes, with the retina. What happens is, they are able to detect fundamentally the electrochemical impulses of the retina before it goes to the brain, and they connect to that level of a movie. They don't see the movie, they see the retinal electrochemical, interpretation of a movie, but it's electricity, it's on. Then the lowest madreg is what the Baruch Hashem says, something you can't even have that. So how you can see the movie? I'm going to let you connect to the optic nerve itself, and that's the movie. Your version of the movie is what the optic nerve does to a movie before it goes to the brain. So, you can get your movie in many different forms. That's the self. Whatever it is, as long as there's something left for you where there's a self-awareness on some level, Olam Haba can exist in some madrega. You see, and that's a moisa. This door is known. The Messiah of this door is Masira. You don't realize that. You see, it's Masira. It's not even Lashon Hara anymore. It is, but Lashon Hara is not what keeps away the Gula. Masira keeps away the Gula. And I can tell you what that Masira is. I don't know if I get into it. And it's schrecklich what's happening in this world. Millions of Jews are Muslim now. Millions. They are. And so, not only here, but in Israel too. The whole Maisa with what's happening with Iran, that even though Iran wants to annihilate the Jews, which is the Holocaust, there are many Jews that have voted for that possibility. By voting for a president who fundamentally caters and enables that. By voting for a man who completely caters to the possibility of a Holocaust with Jews, that's Masira. It is. You're giving koyach to a goy to destroy Yida. It's Masira. It's the same thing in Eretz Yisrael. And I'm talking about a greater Israel, Whether you voted for Gush Katif or you destroyed the house of 10,000 Jews were thrown out of their homes and so on. From Eden. And you allowed the government to do that, and you let the Arabs come in and destroy it. That's Masira. So who did that? Many people did that, and many from people did that, without even realizing that. They don't realize. They're going to have to answer how they voted for the possibility that thousands of Eden were destroyed. Mamash Masira. You see it. You want to know why suddenly, and this is my shita, why did the Haredim have such problems in Israel? Because the Banisham, in my belief, are enraged at the Chassidim, at the Haredim, because of this whole Indian, of the way they participated with Gush Katif and so on, that fought their Yidden, and thought they had to do everything possible to stop that, by at least davening to the Banisham to stop Gush Katif, which they didn't really do, not in any real way. So the Banisham said, you don't care that they lost their Machas, I'm taking away your Machas. And suddenly Lapid gets up and wants to destroy the Haredim. We're not going to go into that. But this door is a door of Moisra. That's what's called holding back the Mashiach, the Gula, Masira. Now, what had to be done? The Midas Harachim suddenly had to come up and create a new Madrega for Moisra. If not, wave of Klal Yisrael today would never see Olam Haba. And it did. I don't want to go into that, but I'm batuach that it did. A new Madrega for Olam Haba was created, I believe, in this door that allowed Moshe to go to Olam Haba as a shadow. The thing that you have to be worried about is, are you the shadow? Will you be with those shadows? Are you a shadow in Olam Haba? Are you an image in Olam Haba? Are you a fragment in Olam Haba? That's a big worry. You know what I mean? So every Yid has to do tshuva of where he was. Where was he when this was going on? On his own, you understand? Because the accusation on this door is Masira. You see, this share fundamentally should be given to the entire Lakewood, because people don't realize it. Every Yid in his door is being checked out, and not for Toloyim, but whether they're moisture or not. Not if they're Malchino, if they're moisture, not simple. You see, and that's what I'm saying. But we see the power of the Midas Harachim, that it can reduce the self-awareness or the entity of self in such a way where the Eloki of the self gets smaller and smaller. The Shekhinah that's attached to each self, it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. You see what I'm saying? And that's what we have to really be concerned about. So what do we see from all of this? We see what Namik Sufa is. We see what it takes to massacre Namik Sufa, really. We see why it's unavoidable fundamentally in that kind of sense. We see what our voida is, you see. We see what the Shekhinah is. We see that it's all about us fixing ourselves so that suddenly we have some shyness to being an Eloki. You see what I'm saying? And that's how I see the picture partially. I'm able to finish a lot, but I think we have a full picture here in a certain sense. Okay? And I apologize. I hope that most of you understood it. Okay? You need to listen to the tape. So, now, I have to be honest with you. You will not see this written anywhere. Not really. Sorry. No, not really. Because this is 40 years of work. Not many people have put in 40 years of work on this. So, I think that the Banisham has given me a tremendous course that, in a way, I think he has allowed me to grasp some level of this. I am sharing with you this work in the schus of the Ramchal. What not for the schus, I wouldn't be giving the share. What not for that, I'll be honest with you. Not that I'm selfish, but I don't want to play with things that are really beyond most people's, and this twist where they see reality. But I have no suffix that this is what's going on. Life is a deception. But you live in lenses. You don't live in reality. You live in the lens version of reality. One day you will live in real reality, and the real reality, which you are, is an habit. But until that time, you live in what's called the lens versions of reality and different versions of existence. And it's your job to fix yourself. And by fixing yourself and grasping your own actus.
God can't fix that for me?
No, he can't. Because once he fixes it for you, he's an other. Then he's outside of you. He's not an other. Then you're taking and he's giving. That makes him an other and you an other. That the worst he can do is do it for you. If he does it for you, then how many things exist? Two things. You and him. But he doesn't want to be a him. He doesn't want to be outside of you, where he fixes you, where he gives and you take.
So make me a tzimtzum without a problem. You can't.
Okay.
Okay.
Whatever.
זה הרו בצורת
It's called that a concept of yichud, he can't fix you, because then he would certify his duality. And what he's saying to you is, I am you. If he is you, he's not fixing you. You have to fix you. Okay, that's all right, but that's fundamentally what that is.
הרו בצורת
Anyway, thank you very much for hearing.
הרו בצורת שיטה
Goy has a self.
Wasn't in the
Excuse me, there's a goy in the Ramchal? Shut that up.